And I'm not here because Fulton County is in the middle of an epidemic or a pandemic with drugs and overdoses and overdose death. But, one overdose is one too many. Any kind of presence of drugs in our communities is a problem, and it's getting worse. I've been doing for about 2 months real research on about 16 counties in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is now the second fastest growing in increases in overdoses and overdose death in the country. I live in New Jersey, and we are ranked #1 in increases. Pennsylvania is now ranked #7 in the country for overdoses and overdose death. It is here, it's everywhere, but it is definitely here. And I think that we're an advantage being in Fulton County and Huntington County and the counties, rural counties in western and central Pennsylvania, because we don't want to become the counties that have the problems like maybe Cambria, Johnstown, or Allegheny County or Philadelphia County. We don't want to move into that direction. So proactive, being, with a lot of foresight, you have a DA here that's very committed. You've got educators here that are very committed, law enforcement that's very committed, not to become the problem, not to become those counties where it's an epidemic, where it's a pandemic. I'm going to share a lot of things with you, but I really wanted to introduce some people to you first. I want to play a quick video. Two people that I met, I guess last year, mean a lot to me, and we're not just going to talk about heroin tonight. We're going to talk about a lot of different things: prescription medication, alcohol, making good choices and making good decisions. So the first thing I want to do, I want to play a clip from a video for you, and then I'm going to bring up the gentlemen that were in the video that the video talks about. So let me play this video for you real quick. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. So, you come up, man. I'd like to, first of all, thank Ben and Ann for hosting us tonight. Please give them a round of applause. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. It's been a long day, so thank you for keeping me on point. Please introduce yourself to everyone and open us in prayer. Thank you.
Well, welcome to my Father's house. And we are here to honor the Lord, but also to allow Him to touch our hearts and reveal His truth to each one of us, because every person sitting here has been impacted and touched by the epidemic that Michael has made reference to. So would you please bow your heads with me? Father God, we come to you in Jesus' name, and we thank you, Father, because you're a gracious, loving Father, and you desire that none should perish. And we are here this night to hear and to see truth that you have for us, Father God. And we just ask that your Holy Spirit touch each heart so that our eyes can see and our ears can hear the truth. And I thank you, Father God, for the messenger that you have brought, Michael D. Leon, the heart that he has to see that none should perish, just like you have a desire that none should perish. So we just ask, Father God, that this night no one will leave here the same, because their hearts and their minds will be touched by your truth and your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Do you take life for granted? Do you think a life of crime is glorious? Do you really believe that you are invincible? I do. My name is Sean Morris, and this is my story. The first time I ever committed a crime, I was 10 years old. Everybody had seen this guy carry this money up to this car. A lot of kids wanted to take it, but everybody was afraid to get in there. And with no hesitation, I just walked up and opened the door and took the money. That was the first crime I ever committed. Yeah, I kind of seen that it was easy to do these things, and your parents tell you, oh, jail's terrible, but then the guy in the street's telling you jail ain't nothing. day before my accident, I woke up, went over town with me and my cousin. We played some basketball, hung out with some friends, did a little bit of drinking. We smoked a little bit of weed. Around 6 o'clock that evening, we were talking about going to this club. It's called Players, and we didn't have a ride. So, we was asking all kinds of people for rides. Can you get us a ride to State College? And we couldn't find one, so we hung out. We were just chilling. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning on August 7th, and my cousin said, we need to find a ride.
We was running around, breaking into cars. Found the keys was in this truck. I got in the truck. Met Sean down here in Hartman later on. He rode his bike down the street. He didn't want to get in the truck. And my brother tried to stop us when I got down here. I told him to get in with me. And he jumped in the truck. And we took off. Speed. I didn't know how to drive. Like, I ain't really never drove before. I never had no license at the time. I was 17. Wasn't drunk or anything like that, but just fooling around, flying, spinning the tires and all of that. Got to State College, met up with these girls and my other cousins and them up there.
We got the girls that we were meeting in State College to get us a couple 40s, and we decided that we were all just going to come back to Mount Union. So me and my cousin got back in the truck. We drove through State College, stopped at the gas station, put a little bit of gas in it, and we drove off.
Instead of getting in the car with them, me and him jumped back in the truck and drove back. And we was taking turns driving. Well, he got out and let me drive. And he was coming right there at the stop sign by McAlevy's Fort there. And I wasn't real familiar with the road. Like I said, I never really drove before. And came up too fast on the turn. I remember him telling me to slow down.
And my cousin was just driving too fast. When we went around the turn, the wheels started squealing.
And I looked over and told him I got it. Like, I wasn't going that fast. I might have been going 50 miles an hour. But by the time I got up on the turn and realized which way I had to turn, it was too late.
I stuck my arms out to try to stop myself because I didn't have a seatbelt on from hitting the windshield. I always thought that I would be able to stop myself if I was in an accident, I was only 17. I thought I was Superman, but it didn't work.
I tried to turn, but the truck just slid forward. Neither one of us had our seatbelts on.
When we hit the tree, I smashed the top of my head right off of the windshield. I was kind of dizzy and dazed. I was leaning up against the passenger side of the door, and I don't know exactly who opened the door, but somebody opened the door to the truck, and I fell out onto my head, and I was laying beside the truck.
And I just remember getting out of the truck and being like dazed. I got hit in my head, and the car that we was following pulled over in front of us. And I was trying to get in the car with them, telling them like, oh, we had to go. Like, that truck was stolen, like the cops was gonna come or whatever. Everybody just ran back to the truck. And by the time I got back to the truck, I just seen everybody like in a circle around Sean was laying on the ground.
At that point in time, I knew I was paralyzed. I knew I was never gonna move again. But I still told my friends, just get me, put me in the car, and let's go. Because I didn't want to get in trouble by the police.
And I was just telling him, like, come on, we gotta go. And he just looked at me. And I remember him saying, like, yo, I'm gonna kill you. And I just knew he was hurt bad enough that we wasn't going nowhere, so I pretty much just waited for the cops to get there.
The injury that I suffered was a C4, C5 fracture. My discs were actually smashed together and pinched my spinal cord off. So yeah, I was in a medically induced coma for 17 days in ICU, and then after that I was in acute care for about 2.5 months.
Like, no matter if he says he forgives me, I mean, he has to forgive me. Cause he's kind of helpless to the fact everybody is. I mean, I can't change it, he can't change it. So I mean, we grow up and we mature to know that, you know, you can't change the past, so you accept things, but like, I don't think it's nothing that I can accept, and it's nothing that he's ever going to fully accept. I wouldn't think so, but maybe he's a bigger person than I could ever imagine being. Because, I mean, it takes kind of a big person, I think, to let something like that go.
There's nothing he can do to change the situation. There's nothing I can do to change the situation, so I can't hold a grudge against him. I know he didn't want me to be paralyzed. And if there was anything that he could do to fix it, I'm sure he probably would.
You know, the kids out here doing the same, and they're younger and wilder and stupider than we was, but they making the same mistakes. So it's like, you know, I kind of feel obligated. Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. I mean, but I definitely commend him for what he's doing, and, you know, he's kind of lit a fire under me, you know, to try to, you know, reach out to other people and to the kids, man.
16 years, I didn't really care. I was just content with laying in bed watching TV, just doing whatever I felt like. Nothing productive, just chilling. Just chilling was boring. Now I want to get out. Gonna take my GED in 2 weeks. Gonna get into college. Gonna try and be a counselor, I guess. I just want to help other people out. I think my story would resonate with a lot of people, especially people who have been in trouble, people who felt the sense of hopelessness, felt like they didn't have anything to live for anymore, because that's basically the way I felt for the past 16 years. Even though people thought I was happy, even though people thought, you know, oh, he's dealing with this very well, on the inside, I felt like a prisoner inside my own body. Felt like I was worthless. Wasn't nothing for me out there. But really, you just gotta have hope, believe that you're worth something. There's something for you to do out there. Something that will make you feel good about yourself.
I'd like to thank y'all for coming out tonight. I think you already know my name is Sean Morris. Bring it closer. I guess we're here tonight to talk about drugs and crime and all these other things. And I guess you can see from my appearance that crime had a big effect on my life. So did drugs. You know, at 10 years old, I committed that first crime. Hanging out with some friends that were a little bit older than me. I was just trying to impress them, you know, like, because I was getting bullied a lot at home and wasn't being accepted, you know. So I started hanging out with some guys that were a couple of years older than me, and, you know, they were stealing. I never really stole anything until this point, but I felt like, you know, maybe people will stop making fun of me if I start doing the things that they're doing, you know. So that's kind of how I got involved in crime, and around the age of 13, it really changed for me. You know, I had a choice to either go on the right path or the wrong path, and I actually chose the wrong path. I really didn't listen to my parents. I hated my parents because of the life that I lived growing up as a child. So anything they really said to me, I didn't listen to them. I listened to the people in the streets. Like I said, they were telling me that you go to jail. It's just a mark on your arm. Like going to war. It's just something that people did. If you lived in the streets. So that's what we did. I learned how to sell drugs and started using drugs and got into a lot of crime. I was sent away 3 times before I ever turned 16. So, and about 17 years old, I was getting ready to go to court about a week before we crashed. That's why I wanted to steal I was with my cousin. I told him I brought up the idea of stealing the truck. But when it came down to it, I found the truck and I left. I told my cousin where the truck was, and he stole it. And when we met up later, I got in the truck because I didn't want to be considered weak. People making fun of me. He might be my cousin, but he clowned me a lot. I clowned him. I was actually a bully towards him for a long time. And even after my accident, I still didn't change very much. I was selling drugs right out of my bedroom window as a quadriplegic, cocaine, marijuana. My mom, she had no idea. She just thought my friends were coming to visit, Until about 2004, I continued this behavior, selling drugs. I was a quadriplegic. My friends would help me. They bagged up the stuff for me, to help me sell it, bring customers to me. And I'd say around 2005, I had a really good friend of mine. He went to prison. He got 15 years for selling cocaine. And it changed my life. I stopped selling drugs then. And I was still using, though, smoking marijuana, till about a year ago when I was dating a woman. We got engaged and things just started going bad, and we split up, and that made me want to change my life. That's why I'm here today. I figured I've been living this life for 23 years and it hasn't really got me anywhere. So I figured, why not try something different? So I tried it. I called Jeremy. Actually, I didn't call him, but I've known Jeremy for a long time. And I hit him up on October 16th. And I told him, Jeremy, I'm really proud of what you've been doing, things that you've been through. And the person that you are today is really inspiring. So he said, thanks. And I hit him up a couple of days later and I said, is there anything that I can do to help the community, to make a difference? And he said, absolutely. And this is how I got here today, from this man right here holding this microphone. He's kind of like a mentor to me. He might not know that, but he is. And I don't know, I guess some of you guys really don't know a lot about drugs, I hear, and some of you do. And the one thing that I wanted to say about drugs and crime and just things in general is that drugs are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. We're never going to get rid of them, because it's everywhere. Prescription drugs, alcohol, weed, pills, we can get it anywhere. I'm sure somebody could get it right now if they wanted to, right in town. So we have to really pay attention to what our kids are doing out here. And, like drugs are ubiquitous. We need to make love ubiquitous. We need to start loving our children and guiding them in the right ways. We're all role models here. Whether you're 10 years old or 85, somebody looks up to you. And the things that you do influence them. So we need to be mindful of what we do, what we say, because it can affect us. People say, not me, this will never happen to me. But I'm just here to let you know that we can get used to anything. You can get used to anything. People say, I'd never let a man beat me till they're in that situation. Then they love this guy, but they're thinking, well, why is he beating me? But he must love me. He tells me he loves me. So we can get used to all kinds of things. That's really basically all I had to say. I wanted to say a little poem that I had written a couple weeks ago. It's pretty much about my life and the choices that I made. It goes like this. My parents always told me bad guys go to jail, but the bad guys told me people like us don't tell. So I followed the code, and I didn't say a word, hanging out with my friends, slinging rocks on the curb. They was getting fast money. I was dead broke. Soon I became the brunt of everybody's joke. So I felt I had to get out there and hustle in the streets. First thing I learned to do was lie, steal, and cheat. Everything was cool, or so I thought it was. Must have been the high from the marijuana buzz. My judgment was clouded, just like the sky. Every day I woke up to get drunk and get high. But it all came crashing down one August night when they took me away on that helicopter flight. Now I'm on life support and I can't breathe on my own, all because the streets were more important than home, and the devil on my shoulder wouldn't let me alone. That's it.
How's everybody doing? My name is John Morris, Sean's cousin. And like you said, after this accident, I didn't slow down either. I didn't even really miss a beat, really. I ended up doing about 6 months altogether. I had to go to a juvenile boot camp facility for stealing that truck when we got in the accident. And, it was the first thing, going through that lockup, it was the first thing that I ever felt like, I actually accomplished. I did good. It was the first time I ever did good in school. I had straight A's, got my GED in there. I was in shape. I was through letters and visits, I built a better relationship with my family. And, it only lasted a brief period of time. So when I came home, it was almost like a light switch. And it was back to business as usual. And, at that young of age, I was 18 at the time. I still doesn't really resonate with me, life and the severities of the things we do and how things affect us and we affect other things. And so I was right back at it and selling drugs, using drugs, crime, didn't really care. Ended up getting arrested several more times. I got into a pretty bad fight and called it aggravated assault, and I ended up doing 3.5 years in prison. And I came home, and that didn't even faze me. It wasn't a good experience being in prison. It was the worst period of time of my life at that point, and it seemed like when I came home and got around the same people and the same feelings using drugs and getting drunk, it was, nothing fazed me. It was back to business as usual. And I ended up violating parole a few months, about a year and a half after I was home, and went back. I was in for 6 more months when I got a letter saying that, from domestic relations, saying that someone was claiming that, they had my daughter. I had a 2-year-old daughter on the street, and I took a DNA test, and it came back positive, and now I have a kid. And this is the first time that I ever really sat back and got worried about my life, was really scared and thought that I was, in a bad situation. And I mean, it really woke me up, or at least I thought it did. It did to an extent, because I came home and I was done. That was a reason for me to stop, but it wasn't really stop. It was I was put on pause because I had something to deal with. She was in a bad situation. I got my thing together, started working for the first time, held down jobs, rough jobs that wasn't paying much, and went through it, parole, and, even though I was trying to do good, it was they was still on me. I didn't feel like I had too much support, except for my family. It's always been there, but it got rough for me, and I got my stuff together, and, I was getting there, and I started back at it again, and it was just that feeling, I let those bad feelings and, how people was treating me because of, who I was and the things that I've been through. I let it get to me, and, I just folded, and I was back to business as usual. And, I ended up, through the grace of God, I ended up getting custody of my daughter, and I found a good girl. And first time I was ever in a relationship in my life, ever. And, she held me down, and my family was still holding me down. And, I came around, and, I was working, and kind of got caught up in work, and that's all I did. I worked 70, 80 hours a week. That's all I was focused on, money. I got to support my family. I got a family now. I had another kid. Now it's like all of a sudden I had a 12-year-old girl, Mackenzie, pop up. This has been three and a half years ago now, and found out I had another child living a half hour away from me. And, it really focused even more about getting money and, taking care of my kids. And I got so much bills now. I own a house, and I got all these cars, and I got these kids. Like, I'm just focused on work, and I really never got correct in my head. And then, me and my cousin, we've been close since diapers, and that never changed. And, I'm always with him, and we're always talking, and I know the person he used to be, and I just started seeing this change in him after this relationship, because I think it opened up a lot of feelings and emotions that he never dealt with. And I never was one to deal with my emotions and feelings. And when I seen him going through this change, it like made me realize that maybe I wasn't as straight as I thought I was, because I still had this reserve. Not like I would ever do any crime, or I was out of the drugs and the alcohol, and I would still occasionally, when I could get any time in, drink or whatever. But I really wasn't involved physically into anything negative. At least I didn't think so. But in my mind, it was just, I was still hating people, and I still accepted it the way things was in my life. And watching Jeremy and Sean, and it kind of pulled my coat a little bit, and it was like almost a light switched on, and I started to see what was wrong with me and how I got to where I was, and all these bad things was happening to me, and how it was affecting the people. And it's like, it was the hate. It was so much hate. When I grew up, I had it rough in my house. You know what I mean? Growing up around my friends, it was rough. They judged you. They held you to a certain standard. If you wasn't this way, and it made you feel some type of way as a kid. And I never really noticed, how it really made me feel, and the things that I would go to and the lengths that I would go to get rid of that feeling. And I thought that, I was just making myself feel good, doing all these things and living this life, and it became a habit. And, I learned how to do that, and I learned how to be this person I thought I would never be. But, now I'm learning to be this better person, and like, it's just amazing all the things that I understand now, and how I see even how I was wrong in some of the things raising my kids. And I'm on Facebook now, and I mean, I got, hundreds of kids as friends from, going to talk to the kids at schools, and I see the things, their conversations, and I watch how people judge and treat each other, not just the kids, but the parents and the coaches on the football teams, and even amongst my kids and my family, younger family, amongst their friends, a lot of family outings, doing, with the kids a lot. And I'm just watching them, and it's so much worse than when we came up. And when we came up, it was bad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm only 34 years old, but, times has changed so much, and it just keeps getting worse. And it doesn't get worse and worse from generation to generation like the older people might remember it. But it gets worse and worse from season to season now. It doesn't even take a generation, and it's getting worse. And like, I don't see enough people helping. Like, nobody helps each other. All they do is point fingers. And even if they do feel some type of, hurt feeling for somebody, that's all it is. They keep that to themselves, and they won't even say sometimes, because they don't want to be judged by the people at their work. And they don't want to, you're going to mess me up at work. You out here getting in trouble, and you yelling at your kids, and you saying you're going to mess up what I got going on. But like, not realizing that we're their problem in the first place. Even though I wasn't out committing crimes and selling drugs and, partying like I used to, like, I was hurting these kids just by, all them knowing of me is how I used to be, not taking time out to let them know that what life is really about. And I know some of you might already know the things that I'm talking about, but there's a lot of you in here that don't. And don't realize that, when you sit there and talk about this person and how they're raising their family and this person and how they're judging you, that you're doing the same thing yourself. And we don't even realize it. All these years, I was a really bad guy. I've done a lot of bad things, a lot more than what I ever got in trouble for, and a lot worse. And I thought I was a good guy, you know what I mean? I thought that there was nothing wrong with me. It was normal. And, I didn't realize. And what me and my cousin want to do, we started this foundation forward. And it's just teaching mainly the kids, but everybody, about facing ordinary realities, with awareness, readiness, and determination. And what that means to me is, you got to be aware of what you're doing at all times. And we're not. As a society, we're not. If you sit here and disagree with me, then you're the problem. There's this thing called cognitive dissonance. And it's like your core beliefs are so strong that when you're this outside information or this, something that someone else is trying to tell you is, introduced into the equation, you automatically, it makes you feel uncomfortable and you just block it out and you just, that's what causes us to judge people. We don't realize that everybody's been through their own struggle, and no matter what walk of life you come from, no what color you are, how much money you got, we're all in this together and we're all connected. Just because we're not brother and sister or cousins or the same race or go to the same church or believe in the same God or, whatever the case may be, we're all the same and we all need to help each other. And whatever we do, if you're feeling a bad feeling towards someone, then you're wrong. You are supposed to feel love for everyone. And that's all I got today.
How you doing? My name is Jeremy Krause. I'm a founder of a nonprofit called Planet Lovejoy. We're about one family, one planet, 7 billion strong. Pretty much everything John just said sums us up. Anything for the greater good, that's what we do. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Mount Union, second child of 6. Come from a very humble family. My mom and dad were head of Boy Scouts, head of the youth group, church every Sunday. I was in the band, I was in the chorus, I was on the golf team, I played hockey, I played baseball, I played football. I was in the drama club, I was in the school musicals, I was in the FBLA, you name it, I was involved. I have a classmate here tonight, Timmy Lear, back here, Officer Lear. I think he could tell you, did you ever think I'd become one of the biggest drug dealers on the East Coast? Probably not. So here I was in high school, overall, good kid, I would say, a little ornery. Timmy actually got me in trouble all the time, but I'm just kidding. But so I got to college. Actually, my senior year, I graduated, and it was that summer. My little brother Wiggy, he was a little, I shouldn't call him out like that, but he was a little skateboarder guy, always smoking marijuana and stuff. And I actually beat him up twice my senior year because I found out he was smoking weed. It made me so mad because I was so anti-drug. So here it was, the summer of my senior year. So I decided, I'm going to try it. Well, why does he keep on doing this? So I smoked it. I went on to Penn State. It became an everyday thing for me. I started smoking marijuana every single day, started drinking every single day. I joined a fraternity. So it just became a party central for myself. Considering I come from Mount Union with humble beginnings, it's not like I had a lot of money to support my habits. So my sophomore year at Penn State, I had one of my fraternity brothers come up and ask me, hey, Jeremy, would you like to go in business with me? Because I knew everybody at Penn State. I've always been a social butterfly. I made friends real fast. So I started right away selling drugs with him. I took the opportunity. So I just selling a little bit of weed, supported my habit, was able to give my bank account a little bit more. But I started becoming this monster. Drugs started completely changing me. I started smoking weed every day. I started doing mushrooms, started dabble into some more things. I got this fraternity brother he's from Russia. His name is Oleg. He became my little brother in my fraternity. This kid was probably the slickest human being I've ever met in my entire life. 22 felonies he was charged with by the time he was 20 years old, represented himself in every single one and got off every single one. This kid was my hero. You know, I just looked at him. I just like, this is like, then, you know, I find out some things about his parents, their connections. I was like, wow, I want to be like this guy. So here it was, after my sophomore year of college, I go out to Penn State, Maine. I was at Penn State Altoona my first 2 years. So I go to Penn State, Maine, and I remember this summer of 98, I get a phone call from Alex. He's like, Kraus, did you ever hear of this drug called ecstasy? I'm like, yeah, I heard of it. He goes, can you sell it? I'm like, sure. So he brings me down 20 pills. I sell them the first day, no problem. The next week he brings me down 100. 2 weeks later he brings me down 200. In a month I'm selling 1,000 a week. 2 months later I'm selling 5,000 a week. 3 months later I'm selling 10,000 a week. So here I am, this little guy from Mount Union, little ginger kid. You look at me. I'm making thousands of dollars that I've never had in my entire life. So here I am, becoming this monster. Now I'm a drug addict. Now I'm using ecstasy all the time. I'm starting to use cocaine. So I started selling cocaine on top of that. And it just became this powerful ego trip that I've had. I knew I had cops after me by this time, and we always just like I knew all the cops. I actually had friends that were cops up there would give me information. So I knew who the cops were when they come to find us. And it just grew into this great big criminal enterprise. We had the FBI watching us. We had the DEA watching us. We had a car ring going on with us where they were stealing cars, retagging them, selling them on the market, actually making passports. You name it, if there was a crime involved, I was doing it. And on top of that, I became one of the most violent human beings you could ever imagine. I beat everyone up. I came home, I beat up my little brothers and sisters. I was in college, I beat up everyone around me. I became friends with everybody on the Penn State football team. I knew guys in the NFL, like everyone. I was just this guy. Everybody knew me as this party guy. So the more involved I got into crime, the more people I started meeting outside of Penn State. I started meeting people in New York City crime families, Pittsburgh crime families, Miami crime families, Baltimore crime families. If you would actually know my list of friends that I've actually sat down and had dinner with, you would probably, I don't know, you'd probably just think differently than me, almost, but so we became these violent human beings on top of all this, became these monsters. And then I just started seeing people that I'm selling drugs to, people overdosing, people committing suicide, people, you know, families just being ruined, people spending all their money, people dropping out of school. I think out of my pledge class in my fraternity, there was 21 of us. I think 11 ended up with a Penn State degree, if I can tell you how bad we were. 11. So that's 50% pretty much. So I moved down to Ocean City summer of 1999 to get away from Penn State for a while. And while I was down there that summer, I remember it was August 6th, I think it was. But anyhow, I remember all of a sudden I get a phone call, and I moved down there with some of my best friends from high school who were selling drugs at IUP that we supplied. And while we were down in Ocean City, they did a sting into my house down there. And as they came in, I was in the back of a limo with a couple guys from the Baltimore Orioles and some Hooters girls. So I drive down by. I see my roommates coming out in cuffs with these guys in the SWAT gear, the machine guns, put them in a paddy wagon going off. And I knew that day there was a shipment that came from New York that was right beside our sink. I knew there was probably, I don't know exactly pills, but maybe like 20,000 ecstasy pills. So if they found these, we all were going to jail forever in the state of Maryland. Luckily, they didn't find them. They tore down the walls of my house, the mattresses, the pillows, everything you could imagine. They ripped open, but they did not find these pills for some, I don't know how. But so we left there. I go back to Penn State. And then so as I'm back there, one day I'm sitting in my apartment, and my roommate came home, and he didn't know I was in there. He's talking to another guy, how they just got pulled over and got found with 10,000 pills of ecstasy, a couple pounds of weed, acid, I don't know how much money. So I'm hitting there. Then they were talking also, they got caught with one of the stolen cars as well. So they're talking how they're working with the FBI, the DEA, and everyone else, the Ocean City Police, the state police. So I packed up my bags, and as soon as he left, I left town and I moved to Baltimore. So I go down to Baltimore, and I started living with some guys that I lived with from Ocean City, Maryland. So I went down there. It was probably one of the hitting rock bottom, if you want to say that. I just knew I was going to go, so I started doing more drugs, became more of a monster, more drugs. I started promoting clubs, and I promoted a guy by the name of DJ Liquid. You know, we started getting him out into the club scene. He became pretty big. But through it all, every single day, from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, I was on ecstasy, I was on cocaine, I was smoking weed, I was popping pills. I would have sniffed a dog's butt if it had got me high that day, and that's not a lie. So that's how bad we were. So During this time, my one roommate, you could really see where he lost his job, lost his girlfriend. Parents didn't talk to him. So it was right around January of 2000. We were getting ready to leave to go want to run to State College. I get out in my car. George, his name was George, he goes upstairs to my house, and he's going to eat his McDonald's, because I remember we all had McDonald's, and I'm driving off. We get a phone call. George took a .45 caliber, put it to the back of his head, and shot himself and blew the back of his head off. Do you know what it's like to see one of your best friends laying there, blood all over the ground, brains all over the wall? Do you have any idea? Knowing that you could have stopped that, knowing that you were part of the problem because he was doing the drugs just as much as you were. It could have been any single one of us. But within a year after that, I had 5 more of my best friends commit suicide. 5. 5 people kill themselves, all because of drug use. So this started leading on. This was my awakening. So here's George dead. I felt guilty. I didn't go to his funeral. I told everybody I wasn't going to go because I felt like he didn't respect us. He took the easy way out, but it's more because I felt guilty. So I'm there that night, and I hear this noise upstairs in our house. So I grab my gun, I go upstairs, and I start putting on lights, and I look down in his bedroom, and there's this thing going around like this in his bedroom. I'm like, what the crap? So I run down, and I turn the lights on. Here it was. It said, "Get well soon." It's a half-inflated helium balloon. And that was George, that was God, that was my angels, that was everyone saying, "Jeremy, it's time for you to straighten up." So I took that as my sign, so I quit doing all the hard drugs, and so I went on just to smoke weed and do pills anymore because I didn't want to be a drug addict. But here I was, still a flaming drug addict. So that summer I opened up a nightclub down in Ocean City, Maryland with a friend. It was called an after-hours club called Life. And it did really well. It was actually very successful. Then my partners, my Russian partner and them, called me up and was like, "Hey, let's go open up a nightclub in Pittsburgh." So we went to Pittsburgh and opened up another nightclub called Flow. And by this time, I actually handed off all my business, and pretty much we had people who would go pick up our pills. And at this time, we were supplying states. We were supplying New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, South Carolina, parts of Louisiana, Wisconsin, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. So we were just all over. And it got to the point we actually, my Russian friend brought one of his cousins over from Russia who was actually picking up the pills, driving them, dropping them off, going back the next week, driving and picking up the money. So being a 22-year-old kid from Mount Union with no money, that's one of the best scenarios you could ever get to have money, right? So we just became, egotistical. I was a monster, beat anybody that's in my way at any given time. We carjacked people. We ran in people's houses with pistol whip. Anything you could imagine, I was part of this ugly monster scenario. So it was, I flew down to Miami to open up a club down there. And the partners we were going to get into were very heavily, mafia family. I know they had bodies. I know they've killed a lot of people. And we're going to open up a nightclub with him. Here I am, this little white boy ginger who was in the band, who was in the chorus, who was in Boy Scouts, who was in the chorus, now involved in organized crime to one of the fullest extents you could imagine. So I get down there, my mom breaks her ankle, I fly home to see my mother, and I get to my mom's house. And by this time, everyone around us had gotten arrested. My best friends from high school were involved in stuff out at IUP. They got arrested, and I knew that they were, working with the police because I actually gave the one a place to live. I gave the one a job, and I knew he was sitting there recording me every time he had a chance. I knew he was sitting there giving information anytime that he could. Actually did the biggest favor in the life for me and actually saved my life. But so January 23rd, sitting at my house and with my mom. And I knew I was followed up in State College that night because I went to see a friend before I got, because I was living in Pittsburgh. And I get the phone call, and the FBI was at my house in Pittsburgh. They were at our place. We had a place in Harrisburg. We had a club in Pittsburgh. Did places in New York. I think they were at 8 different locations, arrested everybody. And they gave me a chance. They said, "You got 4 hours to turn yourself in, or we're sending U.S. Marshals." I turn myself in. I remember going over to my cousin's house. He lived in Shirleysburg. And I said, "Mike, can you drive me out to Pittsburgh?" I said, "The FBI's at my house." And he goes, "Well, which way you want to go? You want to go to Mexico or you want to go to Canada?" And I said, "No, I want to go turn myself in." It's finally done, because I always just felt trapped in a corner. I always wanted to get out of it. I was a drug addict. I don't know if any of you guys know drug addicts. I can promise you this. No matter how selfish you think they are, no matter how much you want to throw them to the side, I can promise you one thing. They do not want to be a drug addict. A drug addict wakes up every day and they hate themselves. I promise you that. And that's why they're doing drugs every day, because they hate themselves. They have no love for themselves. I promise you that. There's no love there. So I get arrested. I go out there. And I remember when I was sitting there, I was getting my picture taken by the DEA agents. They're like, oh, yeah, you're a real gangster. Wait to see how gangster you are when you get to prison. I just remember saying that right there just tore my heart out. So during that time, you find out they took, like, they called us a $3 million ring from everything that they took from us. So I go into prison. First day in there, as soon as I'm walking across the compound, all you hear is, oh, look at the little white boy. We're going to have fun with him tonight. Trust me, being a little white boy in prison is not fun. I can promise you that. So I get in there. So prison, probably the second night I was there, I just remember hearing this bloody scream. Here it is, some guy's getting beat with a mop handle in his face. I mean, while you're in there, there's just like certain codes that you live by that you can't talk to people. And when you say certain words to people, they'll come after you. And I just remember this one guy, he was probably 6'5", and a guy about 5'10", waited till he's in the shower, went in there, started beating him with a mop handle, and started stabbing him inside the rib and everything with a mop. There's blood everywhere. So this is what you deal with every single day you get to prison. But prison, for me, was the best thing that ever happened to me. My best friends that told on me saved my life. It was in March 2003. I remember I getting on my knees and praying. I said, God, I give my entire life to you. I said, whatever you want me to do, I was like, I'm here. I'm going to save whatever life I can get. If I can save one life, I'm going to do it. So when I get out of prison, I get home, I get a job. Actually, I have a couple bosses here tonight from Letterkenny. I don't want to talk too much, Kerry Randler, but So I get a job, I get blessed with a job, and so I devoted my life to my town, to my county, and just to anybody. I founded Planet Lovejoy. At Planet Lovejoy, like I said, we do anything for the greatest good. We do community building. We raise money for kids with cancer. We dab these 5 kids in our area. We dabbed them the Fab 5. I don't know if you might have heard of them from over here or not, but there's 5 kids with cancer. We raised almost $50,000 for them so far in the past couple of years. We do a lot of things with the drug things. We work with kids. We work with adults. We get people to rehab. Anything we can do for the greater good is what we're good. But the reason why we're called Planet Lovejoy, because the 2 things we're missing most in this world is love and joy. I think you guys heard John. And the main thing is we don't love ourselves. We don't love ourselves. And not an egotistical love either. I'm talking about an unconditional love. Love yourself for what God made you to be and what you're here for. And that's the biggest thing that we're missing in this world right now. And so that's what we're about. We have the high school kids over Mount Union are the most amazing kids. We are just completely changing that town around right now. I can't tell you what's going on over there. We reach into the schools. We get the kids involved. The kids change the parents. The parents want to help out in the town. But we're all responsible. We're all responsible. So when you have it, and every single person in here, I guarantee every single person in here is affected by drugs somehow, some way. Every one of you have a family member that's affected by drugs. I promise you that. And don't throw them to the wayside. Don't hate them. Don't think that they're selfish and they're doing this because, they only care about themselves. They hate themselves. They hate themselves. I promise you that. They hate themselves. That's why they're doing it. Love them. So I'm here to help any single one of you. If you have kids that you want us to talk to, as a matter of fact, just 2 weeks ago, I get a phone call at 8:30 at night, a 16-year-old girl going to commit suicide. And she goes, before I commit suicide, I want to talk to you. I said, where you at? I'm coming. So I went and I grabbed the local preacher, and I'm like, you got to come with me in like 3 seconds. He was in the shower. I'm like, you got to get out now. So we went down. We got her the help she needed, and that's what we do. And I'm only 30 miles away. And if any of you guys have family members that you'd like me to talk to, family members like to sit down with, love your family. That's the biggest thing. Love your community. Be part of your community. You have a problem here with drugs. I can promise you that. We all, and it's in every single town in Pennsylvania, every single town in this country. And it's time that we stand up, help everybody out, get the help that they need, and be here for one another. But I'm Jeremy Krause. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
those girls are young kids.
Young kids
Gloucester,
from the
Burlington
surrounding
County.
suburb, Burlington County, Gloucester County, Camden County.
And so when those parents say that doesn't happen, not my kid.
Oh, listen, it happens.
60% of everybody that's going to right now is doing heroin. I still have friends in Mount Holly that come down to Camden and see me quite often and ask me where the good heroin is.
So let's take high school. What percentage of kids in high school you think use drugs?
Probably like
At least 40-50% at least.
Yeah.
40-50% of high school students do drugs.
At least.
People seem to think that the students who are more easily identifiable as the bad students, the ones who get the bad grades, the ones who make trouble in school, are the only ones who would possibly fall down that path of drug abuse and addiction, and it's not. These are good kids as well that struggle with this.
So these suburban parents think, that could never happen to their kid. I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. They don't think it can happen to their kid, and another thing is they don't know how many people really do use in suburban areas. There's a lot of people that use, and they don't see it. A lot of people can hide it.
There's kids everywhere, and the drugs are everywhere, and the parents just don't understand that, yes, it is outside your doorstep, and it just might be next door. You don't know.
Kids are 13, 14, 15 years old now taking Percocets and Vicodin and hydrocodone and oxycodone and Rockettes, and they're not realizing that you are a dope fiend in the making.
right.
You're a dope fiend
Where
in
are
the
they getting the perks and
Oh, right out of their mom's cabinet.
It's an epidemic. It's out of control. In the last month, probably 12 to 14 deaths from the ages of 13 to 22.
I had a couple girls here, about 14, 15, standing on corners. They're supposed to be at the mall. It can happen.
do most girls come out here because of drugs?
Yeah.
That's how it always starts, or most of the time? Or
That's the only reason why girls come out here.
So how did it start?
Prescription pills.
And how old were you?
I was about
Talk loud.
18.
18?
I was a little bit younger. I was probably I was 15.
15 if you started taking Percocet?
Percocet. 30.
Where'd you get them?
Friends, whoever.
Oh yeah, all the girls are from the suburbs.
All the girls out here in Camden working the streets are from the suburbs.
Most of them, yeah.
And they're here supporting a drug habit?
Yeah.
Which is where?
Whether Mount Laurel, Morristown, Cherry Hill, Haddonfield, Prince, anywhere, you know what I mean? Like any nice area.
I think there's more suburban girls out here in the streets than there is Camden girls in the street right now.
First time I smoked marijuana, fell in love with it.
Kids are having rainbow parties. They're mixing all these drugs from medicine cabinets, and they're taking handfuls and they're swallowing them, and they're either dying or having a good time, so they think, and then they're continuing it. They're doing it again. Well, it's not a drug that you can do again and think you're going to walk away from it. It's not going to happen.
I lost everything. I didn't have a phone anymore and talk to my family. I cut everyone off, and it was so scary to do something like that because my family meant so much to me. Like they're a really close family. I come from a great family, upper middle class, live in $1 million farm, and I'm sitting in now an abandoned building that I'm paying $20 to a homeless person to live at, and selling methamphetamines for gang members. And I'm waking up every day with a needle in my arm, and it was just the most heart-wrenching thing to wake up to every morning. And I came to terms eventually that this is how I was going to live.
Start off sniffing, and then sniffing, you need more bags, you'll get as high. So you do the shooting, so you don't have to do as much drugs, and it's a revolving door.
Nothing is better, ever. You think it's all going to get better, but it doesn't.
Do not end up like me, trust me. It's not the life you want to live. It's not glamorous. It's not, you know, it's not fun. It's really not. I'm really dead inside. I'm not, you know, really killing myself. I didn't realize how fast I was destroying my life.
Yeah, they need to know they're wrong. I don't care how good of an upbringing you have. Matter of fact, the better your upbringing, the more likely you are to do drugs.
How's that?
Because the rich kids are the ones that get high easier.
It's that whole keeping up with the Joneses mentality in suburbia where, you know, the nice car and this car is better and I make better cupcakes at the PTA and my fence is prettier than your fence, but both our kids are heroin addicts. Or both our kids are, you know, got drunk last night. Maybe we should talk about this so that next time we have a party, we can stop it from happening. It's a big problem, and parents need to come together and resolve it and not be judgmental. Because I didn't think it would happen to me. I did everything I could to not have it happen to me.
These kids aren't realizing they're getting themselves into nowadays. You know, they're taking these prescription pills, taking these, you know, and they're not realizing in 6 months they're going to be shooting heroin and robbing their families.
Right.
You know,
and they don't see it happening to them.
No, but see, that's the whole thing. Nobody does.
There's just such insanity that goes along with drugs. People don't realize, you know, once you start, it's really hard to stop. I know people say, oh, well, you can smoke so much pot and then, you know, people never move on to anything stronger. That may be true, but most people do move it on to something stronger.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And where do you see yourself in 5 years? You don't know?
I didn't see me this far.
Right. Yeah. Where do you see yourself in a year if you don't get help?
Dead.
Really?
Yeah. I was instilled with good morals. There's no reason for this, you know what I mean? But it can take anybody from Park Avenue to Park Bench, anywhere in between. It's not biased, whether it's color, creed, race, nothing.
Don't ever pick up drugs. You wouldn't look like me, have nothing. Nobody wants you. You're just the scum and the trash of the earth that's on the littering on the floors of Camden. You're just trash. You're nothing, you're nobody. And you will never have any. And you will lose everything you have when you get it.
You don't want to be like me or, you know, because I was pretty and very educated, but I stopped somewhere along the way.
I wish I would have had the knowledge then that I do now about drugs and everything, because we would have probably been able to handle situations a lot better. But I don't think Mark really wanted to be this way. He was really trying, I think, but again, like my brother said, the pull of the drug is so strong, and it just took his life away.
Okay. That documentary I started about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I had 4 friends die in the span of 10 days in Camden, New Jersey. And there was 18 people who died within 22 days of each other. And the Philadelphia Inquirer put out a newspaper story that said, basically, no worries, public. It was fentanyl that these kids died from. Now, some of them probably died with heroin laced with fentanyl, but the problem is that sent a message with that article to the community that heroin's not killing people, it's laced heroin. So as long as you're getting heroin that's not laced with a poison, you're okay. So I went to the Philadelphia Inquirer, I sat down, I got to meet the reporter and his editor, and I asked him to please do another story. I basically said, the message you're sending with that story is a tragic message. You need to do a more in-depth story on heroin, and they weren't interested. So I went off to start a PSA, a public service announcement. I wanted to put a little PSA together explaining to people what heroin was all about, and after I buried my fourth friend, and I started interviewing their parents. 2 of them died in abandoned houses in Camden. Both of them were from a city called Cherry Hill, New Jersey, a very affluent community. The third friend that died behind an abandoned house in Camden. He actually lay there 3 days while people went to see the dead body behind the abandoned house. No one even called the police. Sat there for 3 days. And the fourth kid who died was his mother, the blonde, who said, Mark didn't really want to be this way. And he didn't. Just drugs took his life away. Now, how do I do a community presentation in Allegheny County, like I did a few weeks ago? How do I do one in Philadelphia, like I did a few weeks ago? And then how do I do one in Fulton County and affect people where you understand that the problem exists? Now, we can always sit here and say, well, gosh, Allegheny County, that's Pittsburgh. Delaware County, Chester and Philadelphia, it's a huge problem. But, it's Fulton County, Huntington County. It's really not in our rural communities. It's really not in central Pennsylvania. It's really not in the suburbs in New Jersey, and it is. Camden, New Jersey, the most violent city in New Jersey, the poorest city in New Jersey. You go down there, I can go down there any time of the day or night, 7 days a week. I could buy all the drugs you would ever imagine. Whatever drug you would want, you can go into Camden and get it. And the people who are going into Camden are not from Camden. I interviewed 237 people for this documentary in Newark, Trenton, Patterson, and Camden, New Jersey, 4 major urban cities in New Jersey. 237 people, not a single person was from any of those cities. Not one. They were from suburban communities. This problem exists everywhere. New Jersey and Pennsylvania are skyrocketing. Heroin use in this country is exploding, and it's going to get worse. And we need, as a proactive community, as Fulton County, as a proactive community, we need to start changing the conversation, and the conversation needs to start younger and younger and younger. I'm happy that you all are here. Why there's not 3 times and 4 times as many people sitting here right now, I'm sorry, it makes me sick to my stomach. It makes me sick to my stomach. Now, I don't know if people just don't think that it exists here. I don't know if people are just in denial, misinformed, uninformed. I don't know. But we all have an obligation now, and each one of us has to go out and talk to 4 or 5 people, because you are not your children's parents. You're your children's parents, and you're the quasi-parent of every child that your child touches. We have to understand how in-depth this problem really is. Prescription drug misuse and abuse is rampant. Heroin is a serious problem. 3 times as many people die in America to a prescription drug overdose. Heroin use is exploding, overdose death is exploding. ×3 is prescription drug medication. Now, marijuana is a serious problem. Of the 237 people I interviewed for this little documentary, and most of it was based in New Jersey, but a lot of it came in to Philadelphia, I shopped this documentary to HBO, who was not interested. And A&E got very interested, and they said to me, Michael, New Jersey's epidemic problem is really not of interest to a national audience. And I said, with all due respect, this is not New Jersey's problem. This problem exists everywhere. They said, well, bring us a more national perspective. So that's what I'm in the middle of doing right now. I finished the documentary, Kids Are Dying, it's outside. I wish I wasn't selling them. I don't want to sell them, but I have to sell them to fund the national film, and I'm only selling them for $5. So if you could please get one tonight, and if you want one, you don't have $5, just take it. It's 47 minutes, and it's all filmed in New Jersey and Philadelphia, but this, you'll understand when you watch it, this is not something that's not here. And then right after the 47-minute movie is a 45-minute solution piece. I'm going to give you some information, I'm going to give you some websites, and you can pick up the documentary. At the end of the documentary, there's 25 solutions that I have. We need to solve this problem. As Sean said, we're never going to eradicate drugs in this country, ever. But we can stop this epidemic. And that's exactly what it is, an epidemic. So I was coming in last night, and I saw this sign as I drove into Mcconnellsburg. And I love this sign because I have almost the same sign in Millville, New Jersey, where we live. We have plenty of children, but none to spare. You know, if you went into a county, say you went into a community, and there was one overdose last year. Now, if you asked everybody in the town, do we have a drug problem? Well, the parents of that one child will tell you, we have a serious, 100% drug problem. I lost my child. If it didn't affect you, if it didn't happen to you, do we still have a drug problem? Is it a problem? I was looking at some statistics. You know, I'm going to put this on our website, but I was looking at all the counties in Pennsylvania, and Fulton County is a little bit higher than its surrounding counties. But you looked at Greene County and Allegheny County and Cambria and Luzerne and Delaware and Philadelphia counties. We're in a very precarious position right here, and a situation as far as location goes. You know, to the west we have Pittsburgh, right, Allegheny County. To the east we have Philadelphia, and to the south we have Baltimore and Washington. And it's not too far to Newark. It's not too far to Camden. It's not too far to New York. The purest heroin in America is in Camden, New Jersey, and North Philadelphia. It's not a far drive. It's the purest heroin in the country. The second most purest heroin in the country is right up the Turnpike in New Jersey and Newark in New York. That is according to the DEA. Those statistics are irrefutable. Heroin levels 60, 70, 80% pure heroin. And that's where Baltimore's heroin comes from. And that's where Pittsburgh's heroin comes from. And that's where Harrisburg's heroin comes from. And now you don't, you know, it's funny, in New Jersey, you're talking about these cities where the heroin is. You don't have to go to those cities anymore. You know, and I'm looking at the map and I'm seeing, well, Philadelphia here and Pittsburgh here, and it's kind of closing in the middle. And if you look at the statistics since 2009 for all the counties in Pennsylvania, the counties that are escalating, it's coming central into the state. According to the most recent statistics, Pennsylvania in 2010 ranked 14th in America for overdose death. The very next year, 2011, Pennsylvania ranked 7th. They went from 14 to 7 in 1 year. And last year, Pennsylvania and New Jersey were the two fastest growing epidemic states for overdoses, for hospital admissions, and for overdose death due to heroin and prescription medication. It's happening. Do we have a problem? Do we have a problem here? You know, talking to your kids is very important. When you get into your motor vehicle, you put your seatbelt on. That is to increase the likelihood you will survive an accident. But does anybody know anybody who's ever died in a car accident with their seatbelt on? It can happen. So talk to your kids. Talk to your kids all the time. Talk to them, and you still might lose your child to an overdose. But your chances of losing your child are decreased the more you talk about it early and often. And I wish that we were talking to kids in high school about it, but we just finished a 2-year study in New Jersey to find that experimentation of prescription medication is beginning in the 6th grade. 6th grade prescription pill experimentation. There's not one reason why this is happening. There's a plethora of reasons. There's many reasons. We're the only country in the world that advertises our pharmaceutical pills on TV. On TV. I don't know if any of you have been watching Saturday morning TV, but pharmaceutical advertisements are moving into children's television hours on Saturday mornings. I was watching a commercial last year where a woman was galloping on a horse down the beach with a nice gown, and it was blowing in the air, and it was a beautiful day, scattered clouds are out, and the music is playing, and it's an advertisement for depression medication. And then the narrator comes on to talk about all those side effects, suicidal thoughts, rectal bleeding, which sounded really bad to me, as a side effect of this drug. But you don't pay attention to any of that. What you see is the beautiful scenery, the scattered clouds, the sun, and the woman galloping and the music, and you're not listening to the side effects. We are advertising prescription medications. I was at a conference in Atlanta a few months ago where a pharmaceutical rep got up and said, you know, they were talking about the high price of pharmaceutical medication. And he said, well, prescription medication is more expensive in America than anywhere else in the world because we have to pay for the marketing of our prescription medication. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you have to market prescription medication? Are we doctors? No, we present ourselves to a doctor and have the doctor tell us what we need. Why do we need a television set to tell us what we need? We're sitting, listen, we're making up diseases. Well, that sounds like me. I might need that drug. I go to the doctor. We're telling the doctor that we saw something on TV and we want to get it. We have 5% of the world's population, 5% of the world's population, and we use 80% of the world's painkillers. 80% of the opiates sold in the world are sold to Americans. We don't have 80% of the world's pain. We are a pill society. Take a pill, take a pill. And that's why kids think prescription medication is safe. And it is. If you go to the doctor, get a prescription, take it as prescribed on the bottle. I just wish our medical community was a little bit more informative to their patients about the addictive properties of certain drugs. We are giving Percocets, Vicodin, morphine, OxyContin to kids in high school when they have an ACL, blowout, a knee, some injury. We're prescribing kids opiates. It's a problem. We have dentists prescribing OxyContin, Percocet, Vicodin to people who had teeth removed. I had a meniscus surgery about 2.5 months ago. The doctor knows I'm an addict in long-term recovery. I didn't say that I'm an addict in long-term recovery. He knows I'm an addict in long-term recovery. This guy almost forced a prescription medication on me. And I told him, listen, he said, you're going to need the medication. You're going to be in excruciating pain. I said, that's what ICE is for. That's what ICE is for, okay? Listen, sometimes our pain is we heal through our pain. I love that song. Sometimes, you know, your teardrops, through rain, you heal through your pain. I don't need a pill. Listen, give me hydrocodone 5s. Okay, 300 milligrams of aspirin, 5 milligrams of hydrocodone. If I really need it, I'll take it. And I didn't even fill the prescription. I don't need it. Every time I go back, here's a doctor who understands I'm an addict in long-term recovery. And how's the pain? How's the pain? It's not bad. It's not bad. Now, marijuana is a serious problem. It's just weed. I hate that term, it's just weed. Ladies and gentlemen, I know there's no one in here that smoked weed when they were a kid, but your friends that did, they're not smoking the same weed today that we were smoking in our 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's different. A documentary just came out last Monday from an Australian company who spent the last 16 months in Washington State. And I went to Colorado 3 months ago. I was on a strip of 8 dispensary marijuana shops. One road, 8 shops selling marijuana. And this first shop, I went in with my New Jersey driver's license. I could have bought marijuana. It's legal in Colorado for recreational purposes. And he's selling 1/8 of marijuana for $99. The next store selling 1/8 of marijuana for $99. The next store, 1/8 of marijuana for $99. Everyone's selling the same weight for the same price. It's regulated. So as a shop owner selling marijuana, what is my way to get the customers? The THC content has to be better. They're selling retail marijuana in Colorado right now, 50%, 60% THC content. When we were smoking weed in the 70s and 80s, 9%, 11%, 12% THC. The weed they're smoking today is different, and I have parents all the time telling me it's just weed. Listen, my kid's just smoking weed. He's not doing heroin. Of the 237 people I interviewed for the documentary, 100% of them said the first drug they ever did was weed. Now, arguments will come my way. Well, Mike, they probably drank milk too. Was milk the gateway for them? I'm like, I don't know. If it was chocolate, maybe, I don't know. But milk, sure. Maybe that was their gateway. You know, it's funny. Alcohol's a gateway drug. Marijuana is a gateway drug. It is a gateway because it opens up a door. Now, some of us will walk through that door and walk right back out. But even the people who want marijuana legalized in this country will admit to the numbers. 1 out of 6 people, children who try marijuana will become completely addicted to it. Completely addicted to it. Do you know how many people that is? I know people that don't smoke weed because it's illegal. They go home and they drink. You make marijuana legal, they're going to smoke marijuana. So are kids. 1/3 of every expulsion in Colorado last year, kids expelled from school, 1 out of 3 were for possession of marijuana on school property. It's not legal for kids. People say legalizing marijuana will take the cartels out of it. It will take the criminal element out of it. I'm here to tell you that's absolutely, absolutely untrue. It will increase the criminal element. If I'm a drug dealer and I sell marijuana, Colorado and Washington is my best 2 markets right now because they've legalized marijuana for 21 and older. What is the only illegal market left? 20 and younger. There's so many reasons why this is happening, and this is changing the dynamics of our country. We're in a perfect storm. We're in a perfect storm with prescription medication. We're in a perfect storm with the widespread public opinion that marijuana should be legalized, and we're desensitizing kids to the danger, and heroin is exploding. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's taken 2 years for the news media to report on the thousands of unaccompanied children that are showing up on our southern border from Central America. Thousands of kids showing up in Texas at the border, and their parents aren't with them because they're pushing these kids into the country. And I think it's 60% of our Border Patrol agents right now are processing kids through this epidemic that we've got on our southern border. How many people are coming through with drugs right now? It's the time to bring heroin through our border into our country. I love this comic. The gentleman's visiting his son in jail, and he says, "I don't know where we went wrong with you, son." But his real son's in the next cell, and he's like, "I'm over here, Dad." Like, how out of touch is that father? And see, blame doesn't lie in one place, it lies in every place. I hate when I go into schools and schools say, and I do professional development, and the school says, it's these parents, they cut the apron string in 6th grade and they expect us to raise them, not educate them, they expect us to raise them. And parents will tell you, well, it's the schools. My kid didn't learn about drugs at home, they're learning about it in schools. And superintendents tell me all the time, well, these kids aren't learning about drugs in school, they're learning about it at home. But we always pointing our fingers. I mean, my mom used to tell me, you point one finger that way and 4 pointing back at you. Blame doesn't lie in one place, it lies in every place. I had this picture on my computer screen and my wife came over and she's like, oh, that's cute, until she sees that some of the Sesame Street characters actually possess things that they don't normally possess on the show. And it's just an example on the internet of how we're desensitizing our children, right? Tweety Bird dressed up as a Crip. For those of you who don't know, Crip is a gang. Bloods is a gang, urban street gangs, Bloods and Crips. Crips are identified somewhat by blue color, and Blood are identified sometimes by red color. Not so much anymore, but that's the history behind it. South Park show had a Blood and Crip pep rally, where the Bloods and the Crips met for a pep rally. They weren't meeting for a pep rally. On the show, it was funny. I know First Amendment, constitutional rights, right? We could show these things on TV, and we're supposed to know it's tongue-in-cheek, but how are we desensitizing kids? This is Rolling Stone magazine. Rolling Stone magazine is about what? Don't all answer at once. Music, right? So here's Lil Wayne. He's a gang member. With his right hand, he's throwing up a Piru Blood sign, and in his right pocket, which is significant, he has a red bandana hanging out. So he's shooting a gang sign with his hand, and he has a red bandana gang flag out of his right pocket. And this is the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. Now, that's the #1 selling Rolling Stone magazine in Rolling Stone history. Beat Madonna, the Beatles, Elvis. He's a pariah of society. If you read the article, in the article he says he's a successful drug addict who went to the hospital 5 times last year for a seizure, but that doesn't count. See, he's advertising gang activity, he's promoting gang activity, and the editors of Rolling Stone magazine, they want that. The music industry wants that. They want to advertise that kind of stuff. That's what sells music, right? Charlie Sheen, we were calling him a positive role model. I mean, he was out of control. He was surprised he didn't die from a drug overdose. What commercial were we talking about this past Super Bowl the most? The Budweiser commercial, right? With the Clydesdales and the beautiful dog. And alcohol. I mean, this is the kind of imagery that we send kids about alcohol. We don't send them the real imagery behind alcohol. We don't talk about the liquor industry makes 80% of their revenue off 20% of the users. 20% of the drinkers in this country. I found that very hard to believe until I really did the research for school at Rutgers University. 80% of the alcohol in this country is consumed by 20% of the drinkers. That's crazy. That's crazy. And separation and hate is glorified. I mean, I watch Sons of Anarchy every September when it comes on. I love the show, right? But do kids get desensitized by things? Do we glorify hate? Do we glorify separation? Do we glorify racism in this country? We absolutely do. And we're so separated where hate and violence is glorified, and then we put shows on that promote drugs, where, you know, the episode goes away and we don't think about the person who went away, you know, because we're moving on to a next episode. Breaking Bad, the #1 cable television show up until last year, a chemistry teacher who decides to become a methamphetamine manufacturer, and we look at him as a role model. I mean, when people talk about Breaking Bad, they love the show, but we forgot the message. Grand Theft Auto. Now, I'm not one to talk about violent video games, and that's the problem in our society, but here's the #1 selling video game in the world. They actually sold $1 billion in video sales the first 3 days it came out in the market this past April. This is a game where you advance in the game by killing law enforcement. By killing a cop, you advance in the game. You can actually have sex with a prostitute in this game. Downloading cheat codes off the internet, you can actually have sex with a prostitute unclothed. This is a video game. You can actually kill the prostitute and throw her out of your car and take your money back. Then you could run over a cop on your way to a bank heist. This is a video game. This is desensitizing our children. And I don't know how many of you have kids and grandkids. I don't know if you can really talk to them and get their head out of their Facebook and Instagram and Tumblr and Snapchat and all this other stuff. It's all about relationships with kids, but they're not having the relationships with parents. They're having a relationship with their thumbs, and we don't even talk anymore. I work with an organization in New Jersey. It's a teen helpline, right? I go and give these bracelets out to kids in schools. When I go do a student assembly, I give every fourth grade and up, I give them a bracelet. On the inside of the bracelet is a toll-free phone number to a helpline. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the kids can call the helpline and talk to a counselor. And over the last year, this organization has moved into a full text mode where you don't even have to talk to a counselor. And I'm sitting in a board meeting one time and I'm like, so we have kids who have problems, and your counselor is available 24 hours a day, and now you want the kids to just text you. And they're saying the kids don't want to even talk. They want to text. They want to text the counselor? Well, hopefully we'll get them to text us, and then we'll encourage them to call us. And I'm like, oh, okay, as long as the phone call's in there someday. It's about relationships, but our kids are getting so desensitized. I can't explain Hannah Montana. I put that up there and hopefully it'll come to me one day. I try to explain her, but I can't. But what message does she send to kids? Smoking marijuana on stage in a show. Justin Bieber. We all think it's a joke what they're going through, but what the kids get as a message. All these people died, these celebrities died from a drug overdose, right? Corey Monteith, the middle kid, 31 years old, star of the Glee show. 31 years old, found in his hotel room, overdosed on heroin and alcohol. Now, when the Glee show killed his character off, because he's dead, we have to get rid of the character. When the Glee show killed his character off, they didn't even say how the character died. The character just went away. What a loss of a teachable moment when we have kids engaged in a show. They know how he died. Let's have the show address the social issue and educate kids, but they don't do it. Hollywood doesn't do it. Philip Seymour Hoffman died, 70 bags of heroin next to him, and supposedly he was 22 years clean and relapsed and killed himself with heroin. And we talk about it. It really spurred the conversation in this country. And now as I'm doing community forums in certain places, look, I mean, why? Heroin addiction in this country is worse than it's ever been. More heroin has been, in many, many jurisdictions, more heroin has been confiscated so far this year than in all of last year. In New Jersey, we have 21 counties. 20 counties is up in overdose death over last year. 20 out of 21 counties, it's worse than ever. And people are telling me they're getting sick and tired of hearing about heroin. They're getting sick and tired of hearing about heroin, right? Well, stars have problems, but then we move on and we forget about the hell that certain people go through. The stars, this is the girl from the That's 70s show. She died at the age of 43. And people didn't even know she was gone. I could sit here for an hour and show you celebrities that are gone. Role models that talk about drugs and gangs and alcohol like it's something positive, and we don't really talk about who real heroes are and real heroes and real role models in our communities, because our kids need to get this counter information because they're being lied to. So please don't think not my kid, and please don't think it's not in my backyard. It's everywhere. It's right here in Fulton County. It's in every county. It's in Blair County, Mifflin County, Clearfield County, Westmoreland. Westmoreland had 86. Westmoreland County had 86 overdose deaths last year, Westmoreland County. 86 overdose deaths last year, and they're at 37 so far this year. 37. It's everywhere. See, drug addiction is not about the drugs, it's about the brain. But heroin is a little bit different. Heroin is fast moving, and heroin is very, very dangerous and deadly. And no one wakes up and decides they want to be a heroin addict. It's a process. It happens over time. I have this disease when I was a kid. It can't happen to me-ism. I took it can't happen to me and I put ism at the end and I turned it into a disease and I had this disease. And it can't happen to me-ism put me in a very bad situation. I was pretty successful. I was running my own business. I was living in North Carolina. And I don't know if you remember, but we didn't have the 5-hour energy drinks and rock stars and monsters and Red Bulls, the energy drinks that all these kids are drinking like it's nothing, right? They're drinking it every single day like it's water. Well, we didn't have those energy drinks, but what we had was 7-Elevens sold them in sheets, sold them in different convenience stores, sold them. They were over-the-counter speed. They were caffeine pills. There was 3 pills in a packet. And you were supposed to take maybe one of these pills a day in the morning. The caffeine equivalent of 3 cups of coffee in 1 pill. Well, I wasn't taking one of those pills a day. I was working 7 days a week, trying to stay up all the time, and I was eating like 9 and 10 packs of these pills a day. And I started having serious medical problems from it. I started having blurry vision and restless leg syndrome and ringing in my ears, and then I started having seizures off these pills. I didn't stop taking the pills. I was addicted to the pills, but I really didn't even believe that the medical problems were being caused by this pills. And my best friend said, bump those pills, Michael. You got to try cocaine. See, cocaine is going to help you stay awake like you want to stay awake, but it's not going to give you all the medical problems that those caffeine pills are giving you. And like an idiot, I said, that sounds like a good idea. Now, I grew up with Nancy Reagan and Michael Jackson saying, just say no. I was a dare kid. I knew drugs were bad, but I didn't really consider it going to affect me because it can't happen to me. That kind of stuff happens to someone else. And I snorted a line of cocaine with my friend. And the game Russian roulette is a very tricky game, right? Like the odds are pretty good. You put 1 bullet into a chamber, spin the chamber, put the gun to your head. Now 5 out of 6 chance of winning. Those are pretty good odds. Every person in this room would play the lottery tonight if 5 out of 6 of us were going to win. But Russian roulette, same odds. None of us are going to play that game because the one chance of losing, you lose everything. You're not going to play Russian roulette, but that's what drugs are. See, even the people who want to legalize marijuana, 1 out of 6 kids who try marijuana will become completely addicted to it. Same as Russian roulette. Well, I played Russian roulette and I lost because that line of cocaine changed my life forever because I fell in love with it. I loved it. I was completely hooked and addicted from the very first line, and 18 months later, I was a complete, fully blown drug addict. I sold out my shares of my business for $178,000, and I spent that money in 90 days. I'll never forget being broke. Living in Charlotte, North Carolina, my wife had gone out to support our family, keep food on the table. She went back to work. I was making so much money, it was incredible. And I'm sitting in the bathroom, completely broke, wondering where I'm going to get my next hit for the day. And my 4-year-old daughter walks up to the bathroom. I'm the home care provider because my wife is working, right, me. And she looks up at me and asks me for food. She says she's hungry. There's no food in the refrigerator, and I'm worried about where my cocaine's coming from that day. Jeremy said something very interesting. Drugs turn you into a monster. I would have argued with him till I was blue in the face. I was a drug addict. I didn't hate myself. I didn't use drugs because I hated myself. I absolutely hated myself. Every addict I ever met hated themselves. Everyone. You know, I was sitting here reading, the Pennsylvania Attorney General has a great book. It's called Straight Talk for Parents, and you can get it right from the Attorney General's office. I wish we had books to give you, but you can get this book right from the Attorney General's office. And in the book, I was reading why kids do drugs. And nowhere there does it say you're masking your pain. Nowhere. Nowhere does it say you're trying to forget the sexual abuse you suffered as a child. Nowhere in there does it say you hate ourselves. It actually says, it says we want to fit in. We want to, let me read it because it just blew me away. Why kids use drugs. Now I probably won't be able to find it. Want to be in the in crowd. Have an acceptable look and personality. Not being perceived as geeky or nerdy. That's not why I use drugs. I don't think I ever met a kid experimenting. Experimenting is good, a reason. You're experimenting for a reason. You know, you're experimenting from a reason. I hated myself, and now I fell in love with a drug. Now it's no longer about hating myself. It's no longer about masking pain. It's no longer about escaping anything. I'm hooked. I'm completely hooked. And I moved back to New Jersey because there are no drugs in New Jersey, right? So I'm going to relocate and get a hold of myself. The problem was I brought me with me. You know, I didn't move away from me. I brought me with me, and here I am in New Jersey the very first day getting high. Now, I'm living in a suburb of Newark, New Jersey. I don't know how much you know about Newark, New Jersey, but it's run by gangs. The drug trade is run by gangs, and I don't look gangster to anybody in this room, I'm sure, right? And I looked a lot less gangster back then, but I got into New Jersey and I started getting high the very first day. And my wife was living with me. We had 2 kids, and she decides, you know what, you're out of control. And I loved her, and she thought that leaving me would bring me to my senses. So she took our kids, moved back to North Carolina, so I would come to my senses, and I didn't. I got worse. My gang involvement was out of control. My drug use was out of control, and I moved in with my mother into her apartment. I had nowhere else to go. And I was involved shortly after my wife left in a pretty big drug deal that went bad with the Warlocks motorcycle gang in Sussex County, New Jersey, and I was in a gang in Newark, and a drug deal went bad, very, very bad, and I was held responsible. And May 13th, 1995, I came home at 7:30 in the morning to find my mother strangled and murdered on her bedroom floor. And that was supposed to be me. And May 13th, 1995 was Mother's Day. And I came home at 7:30 in the morning and I found her dead. It was supposed to be me. Now, you would have thought that would have stopped my drug use. You would have thought that it would have stopped my gang involvement, but it didn't. And the day after I put her in the ground, I sat in front of her mound of dirt and smoked crack for 3.5 hours after we buried her, and I went right back to my gang activity the very next day, involved with the very same people that took her life. And 2 years later, I'm involved in another drug deal that goes bad. $1,200 comes missing. My sec came into my house looking for this money. Now, I don't have the money. I just dropped off all the money. One kid was short on his money, and he said he paid me, but he didn't pay me. But he said he did. And they came looking to me for the money. And they came up into my house, and discussion turned into an argument. And one kid gets up from the dining room table and walks into my living room, and he puts a 9mm Ruger handgun to the head of my 5-year-old daughter who's watching TV. And another kid gets up from the dining room table and walks into the kitchen, and he grabs my wife by the hair and he smashes her face on our kitchen counter, and as blood is gushing down the left side of her face, he put a .22 caliber handgun down her throat. And they're about to kill my family. And if it wasn't for one kid, Maurice, speaking up, he spoke up. He said, let's take Michael to see Tariq, the other kid. Let's put them face to face and see who comes clean. And they threw my daughter down on the living room floor. They threw my wife on the kitchen floor. Kayla ran into her mother's arms and crying, scared out of her mind. And they pulled me out and put me in an SUV. And we drove down to a city called Irvington, which is just south of Newark. And we went upstairs into Tariq's apartment. And I'm breathing a sigh of relief because, see, this is just a misunderstanding that I'm sure he's going to straighten this out. And they put us face to face, and he says he paid me, and I get nervous, and I push him, and I punch him, and he punches me back, and we start fighting because he's saying he paid me, and all I can think of is I'm about to be killed. So I get around the back of Tariq, and I start choking him. I put my arm around his neck, and I start squeezing him with all my might as hard as I can, and he's headbutting me, and he's kicking me, and his arms are flailing, and all of a sudden he goes limp. And I guess I killed him, so I let go. But I didn't kill him. He falls down to his knees. He's got his head in his hands. He's at the edge of his bed crying. He can't take it anymore. He can't take it anymore. And we're all looking at him like, what is he talking about? And he gets up and he pulls his arm sleeves up and he has track marks all up and down his arms. See, the heroin dealer has now become a heroin addict, and everything he's supposed to be selling, he's putting in his arms. And he's out of control and he can't catch up, and he decides he's going to put it on me, and if I get shot and killed, it's not his problem. And the same kid who held a 9mm handgun to my daughter's head took his gun out point blank range and shot him in the chest and neck and killed him right in front of me. Now, in all these years of running with a gang, I've seen people die before. I'd seen people scraped off the street and put in body bags, but I never witnessed anybody getting murdered 2 feet from my face, especially someone in my inner circle by someone in my inner circle over $1,200, 3 days after his 19th birthday. These kids walked out of the room like nothing happened. I was scared out of my mind. I walked and followed along, and we go out and get in the SUV, and up the Garden State Parkway we go, and they took me right to my house. Not a word was spoken all the way to my house, and we pull up in front of my house, and I get out, and they closed the door, and they drove away like we just came from the mall. I'm in a complete daze. I absolutely have no idea what's going on in my life. I just witnessed a murder, and I walk up my front steps, and there's my wife on the front steps with my daughter in her arms. And she walks across the porch and she punches me right in the face, and she's screaming at me on my porch with neighbors looking out, "You almost got us killed. This is what you want for us?" And all these years later, I'll never forget that little girl's face as she turned around to look at me. Saturated blouse from crying, red face, scared out of her mind. And we go into the house because now I'm a responsible father and I'm a responsible husband, and I want to take care of my family. A family that I didn't care about for all these years while I'm using drugs, but now all of a sudden I'm father of the year, and I sit down on the sofa with my wife and my daughter's on my lap, and I'm trying to figure out where my life goes. Now, in the meantime, Tariq's sister comes home and she finds her brother dead in the apartment, so she calls 911. And when the prosecutor's office and the detectives and everything come and rope it off and start sitting down and talking to her, they ask her what happened. Now, when we got to Tariq's apartment, it was she that answered the door, and they told her to leave, and she did. But she didn't know who shot her brother. She came home and found her brother dead. Now, she knew everybody in that apartment, everybody who was there, including me, but she didn't tell it on anybody because she's not a snitch, you know. Code of the street, don't tell, don't snitch. Snitches get stitches. Well, they didn't need her because at the end of the building is a little corner store, and outside the corner store hangs a camera, and the camera picked up the vehicle that pulled up in front of that common door that we all jumped out of the car and went upstairs. And 13 and a half minutes later, running out, jumping in the vehicle and driving away. And they picked up the plate. And they ran the plates, it came back to the kid, they picked up the first kid, and he gave up everybody in the car that day, everybody in the house. He told on everybody. He told on the shooter, figuring he'd get out, but that didn't work, so he told on everybody. And I'm sitting on my sofa, and there's a knock at my door, and I get off the couch, and I answer the door, and there's 2 detectives and 3 police officers there to pick me up, and they put handcuffs on me and charged me with first-degree murder. And all the way to the police station, I'm telling them I didn't kill anybody, and I didn't. And I get to the police station, I get my $1 million cash-only bail. And then I get to the county jail, and I meet the other 5 guys who was in that building, the one shooter, the 4 other kids, and they're all charged with the same thing, first-degree murder. Everybody's charged with the same thing. And they knew who the shooter was from the very first moment. And I started to reflect on growing up and having my father tell me, "Son, you're making choices and decisions right now that are going to affect you the rest of your life. One day you're going to be judged by the company you keep." My father always used to have a list of kids I wasn't allowed to play with because those are bad kids. I'm telling you, you don't know those kids. They just got bad reputations. My father knew those kids, and he told me when I was a kid. And now I'm growing up, and I'm being judged by the company that I keep. I'm charged with first-degree murder because I was standing next to the shooter. I'm in a room. The prosecutor didn't care who shot anybody. That's for the trial to figure out. That's for the judge to figure out. That's for the jury to figure out. You're all charged with the same thing. And I sat in a county jail for 22 months waiting for trial. I still have this disease. It can't happen to meism. So I'm telling my public defender how we're going to play this. Because I'm visiting the law library in the county jail every single day, becoming a trial expert, right? I'm F. Lee Bailey now, and I'm going to tell my lawyer how we're going to play this. So I decided I want to go to trial. And see, I'm listening to all these other jailhouse lawyers, these brilliant people who've been in the county jail 20, 30 times before. They're telling me how to play this. I'm not guilty, so go to trial. So I decide I'm going to trial. So I'm in the middle of my jury selection. I have 7 jurors picked. I come back from the holding cell. And my lawyer pulls me into the conference room, and he sits me down at a table, and he puts a piece of paper in front of me. He says, "Read this." Now, I pick the paper up. It says plea agreement. And I throw it back at my attorney. He says, "I told you I'm not taking a plea. I want my day in court. I want my trial." He said, "Son, read the paper." I pick the plea agreement up. It says plead guilty to first-degree aggravated manslaughter in exchange for a prison sentence of 20 years. And I laugh at my lawyer. I said, I'm not pleading guilty to something I didn't do. I want my trial. He said, son, we go back out there and pick the rest of your jury. I'm going to give you the best defense you'll ever get. I just want you to know one thing. State of New Jersey, murder carries 30 to life. But conspiracy to commit murder carries 30 to life too. And if the jury comes back with a finding of a conspiracy because they believe you were part of the conspiracy to kill Tariq, you're getting 30 to life. I just want you to know that. 20 years, or we go back out here and roll the dice. You're looking at 30 to life. You have 1 minute, the judge is waiting. And he literally got up and walked out of the room. It didn't take me a minute. It took me 30 seconds. My life came down to 30 seconds. And I signed the plea agreement. And I spent 12 years incarcerated, 10 years behind the wall, 2 years in a halfway house, and 3 years on parole. I should be sitting in Trenton State Prison for the rest of my life. That's what I deserve. I caused my mother's death. It wasn't at my hands, but I caused it. I almost got my child killed, my wife killed. I have no idea how many people died off the drugs that I peddled. I have no idea how many people died from the guns I used to run up from North Carolina every single week. I have no idea how many people I caused, how much hurt and pain I caused families from the crimes that I committed and that I was involved in. I should have spent the rest of my life in prison. That's what I deserve. Every single day I thank God for the second chance he gave me that I don't deserve, but I should be sitting in prison for the rest of my life. That's what I deserve. But I got 10 years behind the wall, 2 years in a halfway house, and 3 years on parole. I went to prison for a line of cocaine. I went to prison for aggravated manslaughter. I'm responsible for the death of my mother. I'm responsible for the near death of my wife and daughter. But I went to prison for a line of coke, because that's where it started, in the experimentation of cocaine. I was that 1 out of 6 loser playing Russian roulette. This is a picture of my mom. It's the only picture I can show that I don't start crying in the middle of the presentation. It's me at the age of 1 being held by my mother at the 1964 World's Fair. Now, I know it's her, I know it's me, but I have no emotional attachment to the picture. It's the only picture I can use. I'm absolutely responsible for my mother's death. And she was murdered on Mother's Day morning. I can never change that. I'm responsible. This is a picture of my daughter 2 weeks before that happened, Kayla Marie. Picture of my wife, who I put in prison too, just that her prison didn't have any bars. For some reason, that lady stayed by my side. I have no idea why. None whatsoever. God gave me a woman I don't deserve. And she's sitting right there. She came with me tonight. And she stayed by my side all those years. She never missed a prison visit. My mother wanted me to grow up and move into a gated community. Wasn't the gated community she had in mind. My mother didn't raise a drug addict. And for any parent here who's lost their child, it's not your fault. My mother didn't raise a drug addict. I became one on my own, and we're losing kids left and right. I went to 37 funerals for my documentary, and it's killing me. It's killing me. I changed her life forever. My daughter's getting married this year unless I can figure out a way to sabotage the wedding, and I'm working on that right now. She's affected. My wife, her nickname's Cindy Lou Who. I call her Cindy Lou Who because she loves Christmas, right? Like the little Cindy Lou Who from The Grinch. And I never found out until 3 years ago. My daughter came up and said, you know, the whole time you were gone, Mom never put up a Christmas tree. She didn't celebrate Christmas for 12 years while you were gone. I changed her life forever. And every single day, I think about the freedom that I lost. And I blame no one. The kid who gave me drugs, I don't blame him. The kid who killed, 2 kids who killed my mother, I don't blame them. The guy who shot Tariq, the guy who put a gun to her head, I don't blame them either. I blame the person I look at in the mirror every single day, and if it wasn't for Jesus Christ, if it wasn't for my God and my Savior, I wouldn't be standing before you. I never dealt drugs in Fulton County, Pennsylvania, but I don't know if any of the drugs that I touched made its way to Fulton County, Pennsylvania. I don't know if anything I did caused problems in central Pennsylvania, but I owe every single one of you. The state of New Jersey paid millions of dollars to incarcerate me. I had a broken neck when I was in prison, and they did neck surgery. They fused 3 vertebrae. We were in the middle of a lawsuit. We had to get the medical documentation, and they spent $1.7 million on my surgery. They spent $75,000 a year to incarcerate me. I owe my community, I owe my state, I owe my country because of the choices and the decisions that I made. I'll never forget the day I got picked up from prison. My wife picked me up from prison. My license was long expired, right? So I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and we're driving out the long road from the prison, and I'm looking in the side view mirror, and it was a beautiful day, scattered clouds around, and I'm looking in the side view mirror, and I see the barbed wire and the tower and the prison, and I'm looking at this scene of degradation, and I'm saying to myself, never again. I'm never going through this ever again. And then God directs my eyes to the words, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. And I'm telling you, it was eerie. It was one of those tangential points of my life. My hair stands up on my arm every time I think about it because I'm leaving the worst place on earth. I'm leaving the consequences of all those years of choices and decisions. And God says, son, go back to doing drugs. Go back to dealing in gang activity. You're going back to prison. Look ahead of you. You know, there's a reason why the windshield's this big and the rear view mirror is this big. Because where would we go if we lived through our rear view mirror? But if we're driving, we can't drive without that rear view mirror. We have to see where we've been. I don't want my past to be the future of any kids. When Jeremy and Sean and John and I went into Huntington County schools, I can't tell you the amount of kids that reached out talking about things that I don't even want to mention. I can't tell you how affected those kids were. When I go into schools in New Jersey, I give out these bracelets, and the 24-hour helpline records 63% state average in calls to their helpline. Kids are really having problems, and we're dealing with kids who have parents who are using drugs in their presence, getting high with their kids, serving alcohol to their kids. We're in the middle of an epidemic, and it's going to get worse. I wasn't focused on rewards, and consequences came my way. Now, I represent both stigmas. I'm an addict in long-term recovery, and I'm an ex-offender. For the rest of my life, I can never be a hero with a badge. I can't be a corrections officer in law enforcement. I can't work at a hospital because of my drug history. I have the honor of going into schools every single day. I can't be hired by a single school I enter. I go into 19 juvenile detention centers, and I can't be hired by a single one. I'm an ex-con, and I'm going to be an ex-con the rest of my life. The rest of my life. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm ashamed of my past. I'm ashamed of it. But I have no shame because Christ took it away. My people that I've met, thousands of offenders I've met over the year, 80% of them are there behind the drugs. I bet you if you ask this DA how many of his cases are drug related, he'll tell you 75, 80%. It's an epidemic. Our prison system is exploding. We're spending $75,000, $80,000 a year to incarcerate people. In Pennsylvania, we've had a 500% increase in the unauthorized use of prescription medication in this state. Over 2,000 fatal overdoses in Pennsylvania in 2011, the 7th most deaths in America. This state, fatal overdoses in Pennsylvania triple the national average. This state, this is a problem, it's an epidemic, and there's a huge void in treatment beds and continuum of care, okay? We're a prison, we're a prescription drug culture, we're a pill society. We're a pill society. Over 40 Americans die every single day from prescription medication and over 105 overdoses every single day in this country. And it's getting worse. It's getting worse. It's like I said, playing Russian roulette. Prescription drug abuse. Let me talk to you about, this has just happened last year. We had a 24% increase in death between 18 and 24-year-old kids. Nationwide, between the ages of 48 and 65, it's the most overdoses from prescription medication. It's a problem everywhere in every demographic. So let me just talk, rather than, that won't come on, so let me just talk to you about this. I want to talk more about solutions. I just wanted to share my story with you so you know where this comes from. Here we are, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, D.C., Philadelphia, Newark, New York. It's here. And those are just major distribution points. You can go to other areas. I'm dealing with a whole epidemic in Scranton, Easton, Pennsylvania. There's trying to open up a closed down hospital as a rehab, and city council is in Carlsbad, Pennsylvania, and they're trying to fight the opening of a rehab in their town because they don't want the addicts to come to their town. The addicts are in your town, okay? They're here, they're your family members, they're everywhere. This is where this is happening. We're in the middle of this place. I just see the state of Pennsylvania squeezing, right? And most people aren't using drugs for the first time through some stranger or some drug addict. It's their friends, like that old MCI, Friends and Family Plan. MCI, Friends and Family Plan. We don't think pills will lead to dope. This is some people from my documentary in North Philadelphia. This girl decided, I told her what I did, and so she pulled up her arms. I don't know how old she looks to you, but she's 23. She has 3 children in a city called Voorhees, New Jersey. In the documentary, when you watch it, she'll show you she hasn't seen her kids in 3 years. She spends all her time hopping in and out of trucks and cars to support her 20 to 25 bag a day heroin habit. And she was a cheerleader and a gymnast, and she got this way from prescription opiates being prescribed to her at the age of 17. Perks led to oxys. The doctors wouldn't give them to her anymore. She got her pills on the streets, and once those $20 and $30 pills, $40 and $50 pills became unavailable to her anymore, a bag of heroin is $5 to $7. In Camden, a bag of heroin is $5 to $7, and it's very pure. These are inevitable consequences. And, you know, I tell kids in school all the time, if you grow up and wear handcuffs, I want them right here. I don't want them on your wrist. I wore them on my wrist. Grow up and be a hero and put them here. Okay? I don't want you to see this unless you grow up to be a corrections officer. But then at the end of your shift every day, you go home. It's not your home. Corrections officers have the toughest job in the state. They walk the toughest beat. If that's what you want to be as a career, I want that, but I don't want you to live there, and I certainly don't want you to see this before your time. And too many kids are dying. This expression called turning up. Kids are turning up. There's a song on the radio that says, turn down for what? Turn down for life. Turn down for your future. Turn down drugs. The song says turn down for what? Why turn down? There's another new song called Hangover by Snoop Dogg and this other guy. It's talking about hangover. The way to get rid of your hangover in the morning is to drink. And the video is disgusting. Hangover. We're advertising this to our kids, and they're starting younger and younger and younger. So this is a girl, the last funeral I went to last year, she wasn't that old, but that was a picture that her grandmother gave me. I mean, what does she look like she's going to be when she grows up? You know, and every girl in this audience and every girl in all these schools, they have pictures just like this at the age of 7, at the age of 11, at the age of 14. This is where she started drinking alcohol and smoking weed and taking her stepfather's Klonopin because she wanted to get all effed up, and alcohol and Klonopin mixed together. Her friends told her that that was going to be cool. Our kids are going to medicine cabinets, and they're actually taking out their smartphones, and they're typing in the name of the prescription medication that's in the cabinet, and they're putting it into Google. And Google and some other websites will tell the kids what the drugs will do. And they take drugs off their smartphones because they want to get high. And this girl, was the queen of selfies. I met her in the detention center. She went to a drug program. She didn't make it. She got back to the detention center. She went to another drug program. She didn't make it. She got back to the detention center. She said she wasn't a drug addict. That's why she wasn't beat for the drug programs. And on December 13th last year, I saw her in the juvenile detention center again, and they were releasing her to probation. She didn't make it into a program twice, and now they're releasing her to probation December 13th. 2013, and December 18th she died. December 21st I went to her wake. December 22nd I went to her funeral. This is a picture she took right before the summer. She doesn't look like she's a heroin addict, but that's what she was. And she died at the age of 18 with a needle in her arm. I'll never forget that week with all those kids in that week talking about, our friend Cassie and all crying and, talking about how terrible it was. And I asked him, well, where were you? Why weren't you telling her to stop doing drugs? Why were you getting high with her? And 2 of the girls actually got up from the wake and went out to their car. And as I was leaving, I saw them getting out of their car. And they went in there to get high. They're leaving their friend's wake to go out to the car to get high. They're masking pain. And the last thing I just want to mention before I talk about the solutions real quick is urban street gangs are diversifying their business model. And that's what street gangs are, they're businesses. And they're diversifying their business model. And they're getting into things because the rural communities, the suburban communities, there's a much greater financial incentive for them to be out here. And there's less identification of them by law enforcement, less focus on them from law enforcement. The financial opportunity is much greater, and they're recruiting kids as young as 11, 10, 11, and 12. Prescription drugs and other opiates is a huge market for gangs, and heroin is exploding. because using drugs supports gangs. You might not think there are gangs in Fulton County, Huntington County. You might not believe gangs are here. Gangs are here. Gangs are everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So educators need to be part of the solution. Parents are part of the solution. These slides are going to be available to you. I've got slide after slide after slide of symptoms and signs and things to look for. But rather than go through them all, they're available to you. I'll show them how they're available to you forever. You'll be able to go home on your internet, or you can send me an email, or you can write me a note right now with your address. I'll send you all these slides all printed out because I want you to have them available to you at all times. I just put this website up a couple weeks ago called heroinsolutions.org, and I came up with 25 solutions, so they're available to you to look at. The messenger is very important. We have to deliver this message to our kids. Let me explain the solutions. Awareness is extremely important. In Fulton County, it's paramount of importance because there's not enough people here. Awareness is important. We have to get the word out. Student education, we have to educate students differently in their schools. We have to talk about this problem to kids. The presentations I used to give to high schools, I now give to middle schools, and the middle school presentations I now give to elementary school kids. I start talking about drugs and alcohol to 4th graders in a different way than 12th graders, but it has to start early. You have to tell your toddlers, this is medicine. Medicine comes from mommy and daddy, the doctor, grandparents, whatever. You only get medicine from mommy and daddy. Medicine makes you better, but if somebody tries to give you something, pill, tell you it's candy, it's not. That stranger danger thing is so important now. It's just never been more important. We have a treatment void. In Pennsylvania and New Jersey, we have a treatment void. And the problem with treatment is insurance. We're literally having insurance companies not pay for heroin treatment. And with Obamacare and a lot of things that are happening, they're moving towards outpatient. We need inpatient more than ever, and we're moving towards outpatient. You can't take an opiate addict that's been using heroin for 3 and 4 years and expect them to go to a 3-day detox, 14-day treatment and get better. And all the time, I'm making the 3rd trip to Florida in a couple of weeks. I have kids down there, 17, 18, 22 rehabs. 22 rehabs. When are you going to get it? Well, some of the rehabs are 6 days. I have kids all the time, parents call me all the time. They're calling me up from Lighthouse, told me to come pick my son up. He's been there 3 days, the insurance is over. They're kicking you out. They're kicking these kids out. And we don't even have a continuum of care. Inpatient we need, aftercare we need, relapse prevention, and we need in-depth continuum of care, recovery centers. Not in my backyard is a real problem. Is a real problem. You know, the people today, I did a health fair today. We were out there for about 6 hours at the hospital. Anybody that was an employee, this was really funny today. It was really impactful to me. One of the people told me that there was a 13-year-old that got admitted into the hospital today from an overdose. At this hospital right here, a 13-year-old. Everybody I talked to from the hospital, and I give them my card, I'm asking them to come here tonight. Every single person in the hospital said, well, I know there's no drugs in Fulton County. Every single one of them was laughing. Every single one of them. If they weren't an employee of the hospital, well, there's not really a problem in Fulton County. Some would be like, yeah, that's Mount Union. Yeah, that's Johnstown. Oh, yeah, Pittsburgh. We don't really have a problem here. Well, what's a problem? How do we define a problem? Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, and most of you in this room, I'm preaching to the choir. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust me, it's bad, and it's going to get worse. Medication-assisted treatment. A lot of people don't understand methadone or Suboxone, think it's putting someone on another drug. You're replacing one drug with another drug. I'm not an advocate of long-term Suboxone. I'm not an advocate of people on Suboxone for 5 and 6 or 7 years. But I know heroin addicts that have been shooting heroin for 10 and 12 and 15 years. They might have to be on Suboxone for the rest of their life. I'm not a doctor. There's no consonants after my name besides certified alcohol and drug counselor. I'm not going to say whether or not Suboxone for years and years and years is appropriate. But it's a medication, and we need to use medication to assist treatment. We need to alter the HIPAA laws. Very similar in Pennsylvania, but in New Jersey, a 14-year-old child can deny their parents access to their treatment by signing a waiver. Your insurance is sending your 14-year-old and 15-year-old to treatment, and your 14 or 15-year-old treatment can refuse you any information, and HIPAA laws is protecting your child. How is that protecting your child? In New Jersey, your 14-year-old daughter can go get an abortion without your knowledge, and the school will send her there. And that's a problem to me. Maybe it's not a problem to other people. And treatment in county jails. I don't know how much treatment is in Franklin County Jail. I don't know how much treatment is in Huntington County Jail, but from what I hear, none. And there's very little treatment in prisons. Very little treatment in prisons. We have a captive audience. If the kid's arrested, he's on bail, and he's in the county jail, he should be going to AA and NA meetings every single day. He should be watching videos every single day. We should get to him or her no matter what. We have a captive audience. Why aren't we treating our jail inmates? Why? Peer-to-peer programs in schools. Jeremy Camp, Planet Lovejoy, they do an amazing thing. I'd love to help bring him to Fulton County, where you've got your older kids mentoring to your younger kids. The number one reason kids who don't do drugs say they don't do drugs is because they don't want to disappoint their parents. Parents are the anti-drug. It's not just a cliche. So take peer-to-peer programs with effective peers, effective students who are doing the right thing, who would not do drugs, and get them as the role models to other kids, and work to get kids together on a peer-to-peer program and educating the educators. We're literally asking teachers to look for things, and we're not even telling teachers what to look for. Teachers, I do the professional development, and teachers, that's why I said what a blood and a crip was. I had a teacher the other day ask me what the Bloods and Crips were. She was in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I don't know how much you know about Elizabeth, New Jersey, but there's some gangs there. She asked me what the Bloods and Crips were. How long have you been a teacher in the district? 17 years. 17 years, and you don't know what the Bloods and the Crips are? Molly. I don't know if anybody knows what Molly is. It's a slang word for methyldiazepine, methamphetamine, ecstasy, a pure form of ecstasy. Molly, you might hear these terms. Educators need to understand what they're looking for, and so do parents. We need recovery high schools. There's an amazing one in Philadelphia called Bridgeway Recovery High Schools. We would never take a guy from a bar and send him to treatment for his alcoholism and send him back to the bar, but we do it all the time for our kids. We take a kid out of their high school environment, send them to treatment, and send them right back to the same high school that they came out of, in the same environment with the same peers and friends. We need recovery high schools. We need recovery programs and services for college students. 1 out of 3 college freshmen drop out their freshman year nationwide. 33% of college freshmen drop out their freshman year. I have never seen that on a college website. I've never been to a college fair where a person told me that. I've never seen it on a college brochure, ever. And 1 out of 3 college freshmen drop out their freshman year. And overwhelmingly, it's because of drugs and alcohol. We're not taking it seriously. So this is the New Jersey Prescription Monitoring Program. It's something I've been trying to do in New Jersey. In Pennsylvania, the problem's worse. It's voluntary. If you have an injury and you get an MRI, you go to the doctors and you go to Walmart to fill your prescription. Some people take the same MRI to another doctor and go to CVS, and take the same MRI to another doctor and go to Walgreens. It's called doctor shopping, and it happens. And if a doctor can go into a database and pull up the patient's information and find out that they just went to another doctor, it'll prevent another prescription for an opiate painkiller. The hospitals don't even do it. The hospitals don't have the database. They're not even on the database where they can say, you just went to a doctor and got 90 oxys last week. Now you're presenting yourself at the emergency room to get an injection or another script. The prescription monitoring program needs to be mandatory. There's not a pharmacist or a doctor who should not be on it. There's not a pharmacist or a doctor who shouldn't want to be on it, because we need to make sure that these people aren't doctor shopping. Now, 44 states have the program. Only 1 is mandatory. In New Jersey, it's completely voluntary, and 20% of our doctors are on it. We're making it mandatory. It's going to come. There's 2 bills in the Assembly and the Senate in New Jersey to make it mandatory. But here's what's going to happen. All those people that are out there doctor shopping right now, we're going to see a heroin wave that we're not prepared for, because all those people that are on prescription opiates, that are doctor shopping and getting their pills that way, when they can't get them that way anymore, they're going to turn to heroin. They're going to turn to heroin, and the heroin is in the streets ready to fill the void. Electronic script pads, we need to eliminate script pads, completely eliminate them. Every script written by a doctor should be electronic, and it should go right to the provider. Our doctors don't get enough information on addiction. Some doctors tell me to get 4 to 6 hours in addiction training in medical school. How is that possible? And we need best provider education laws. We need to have a continuum of care in medicine. We don't need to have doctors. You can prescribe addictive prescription opiates, but you can't prescribe Suboxone unless you're a Suboxone doctor. That doesn't make any sense to me. You can prescribe the thing to save you, but you can't It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't. Good Samaritan laws, we need to hold harmless anybody who picks up the phone and calls 911. 80% of heroin addicts, when they are using heroin, they use it with someone else, and when they're found alone, 80% of them are found alone. When they're found dead, they're found alone. We need to give immunity. We did it in New Jersey. I don't think Pennsylvania has a Good Samaritan law. Does it? It does. So you won't prosecute anybody who picks up the phone and calls. But for overdoses, for drug overdoses, because I looked them up last night and it didn't say drug overdoses. We need to tell our students, we need to tell our children that if somebody needs medical attention, you need to pick up the phone and call 911. Forget any kind of consequences. In New Jersey, we passed a law, not warrants and not distribution. If the police get to the house and save the person's life and there's a kilo of heroin sitting there, you're getting prosecuted, okay? But if you were an addict sitting in a room with someone and you're both using heroin and there's paraphernalia over there and someone dies and the other person picks up the phone, he's not getting prosecuted for any paraphernalia or heroin that's there, unless it's a kilo or they're distributing or they have a warrant. And rescue drug laws like Narcan and naloxone. We need to make it available to every parent who's got a kid in their house that's a heroin addict. And every EMT, every paramedic, every police officer should carry this rescue drug law called naloxone, Narcan, to save a life. This is a picture of them. This is a Good Samaritan law in New Jersey. Don't think twice, call 911. And this is a naloxone drug that can bring an addict back to life. But we need to have civil commitment of addicts if they get brought back by naloxone. We cannot have an addict be brought back from an overdose, death, and then walk off to their drug dealer. And that's what's happening in New Jersey. We're not civilly committing our addicts who are being brought back from an overdose death, and it needs to happen. And we need to have laws to fight distribution. Prosecutors and police officers need to be able to prosecute heroin in a different way than they prosecute other drugs. In New Jersey, we're trying to change the threshold laws. I do not want people to be able to have a pound of heroin and get prosecuted like a pound of marijuana. There's a problem. So don't be your kid's friend. I wish parents would favor strictness to freedom, knowing all aspects of their children's life. I'm not saying this is a guarantee, but it increases the likelihood of success. The suburbs can't be Shangri-La and serendipity all the time. People in Fulton County and all these Westmoreland and all these Huntington and all these surrounding counties, people need to understand that this problem exists and we have to band together. Now there's a group that put this on called Power. There's a partnership at the hospital. We need to get involved, and Fulton County needs a strategic plan. All our faith-based community needs to be involved. All our educators need to be at the table. All law enforcement needs to be at the table, and citizens need to step up. We cannot wait till there's a problem to police to show up. We have to assist law enforcement because they cannot arrest their way out of this problem. They need the citizenry's help. We have to come together. We have to come together to fight this problem. So when you go home, if you've got unwanted, expired, or unused medication in your house, I'm begging you to take it out. Take it out. Mcconnellsburg, Fulton County Sheriff's Office is looking to put a drop box in the Sheriff's Department, I think it is. They're looking to put a drop box where you could take your unwanted, expired medication there. Please don't flush it down the toilet. I don't know if you could take it to the police department and just drop it off. Can you do that now, or are you waiting for a box? Yeah. You have an amazing sheriff's department. If you have unwanted, expired, or unused medication in your home, please take it to the sheriff's department. I hope that's not going to inundate you with a lot of medication, but get it out of your house. Just get it out of your house. Whether you have kids in your house or not, whether you have visitors or not, just get it out of your house. And I'm not just talking about opiates. I'm talking about any prescription medication that you don't want anymore. If you don't want to take it to the sheriff's office, put it in a box, a Tupperware, a clear thing, put cat litter or coffee grounds in there, seal it up and throw it away. Get rid of it. Do not flush it down the toilet. It's not the best thing to do. This is, wow, they're up there 3 times. This is my website, steeredstraight.org. There's tons of information on there. If you go to steeredstraight.info, all these slides will be there for you to look at for the rest of your life. There's a website called kidsaredying.com that you can see the previews. The documentary's out here. I'd love you to buy it. If you don't have the money, you want one, just get one. It's 47 minutes long, and right after the 47 minutes is these solutions explained. There's going to be videos up there in the next 10 days. This is a problem. I don't want my past to become the kid's future. I don't want any kid to end up like me. I turned out pretty good because I have an amazing God and a very amazing wife, but I took the long way around. I'd love now to just take a couple minutes. Jeremy's here, Sean and John's here. I know some people might have some questions or some comments. So if you have a question or comment, please, I'd love you to ask it. Just raise your hand, not all at once. Everybody's raising their hand. I really appreciate your time. I'm so grateful that you came out. Does anyone have any questions for John or Sean or Jeremy or myself? No one has any questions? Really? Usually it's the most amazing citizen in the community that has the first question, and they ask it first. I don't know who that is, but yes, there she is. I knew she was here. Yes. You know, I'm telling you right now, there's a lot more parents in Mcconnellsburg, Pennsylvania dealing with the exact same problem you're dealing with. Trust me when I tell you, there are more parents like you than you will even imagine. And we have to stop, we have to get away from stigma. You know, Rick Warren, the author of A Purpose-Driven Life, he's a big pastor in Seattle, Washington. His son committed suicide 3 years ago. And he kind of went into seclusion for a little bit, but now he's out. And one thing he says is so true. In this country, we could talk about everything from the neck down. But from the neck up, we can't talk about anything. Mental health illness, addiction, shh. What do you mean he's on heroin, synthetic marijuana? What do you mean? You can't talk about it. You have to talk about it. We have to get rid of stigma. We have to stop being ashamed of this disease. We have to stop being ashamed of addiction. We have to stop. So, like I said earlier, I'm not a doctor. I don't like Suboxone long term, but I understand and will accept that some people need long-term Suboxone. So I'm not the person to give advice on Suboxone. I sure would rather be, well, I kicked heroin and I kicked Suboxone, and kicking heroin was easier than kicking Suboxone. But if I'm under medical care and I'm being reduced on Suboxone and I have behavioral development groups and things that I'm doing in my recovery, if you have diabetes, you have an obligation to carry insulin. You have an obligation to be a part of the cure of your disease. If you've had emphysema and lung cancer, you go back to smoking, you're not a part of your care. I believe as addicts, we have an obligation to ourselves and to our loved ones to commit to our recovery. Recovery is a beautiful thing, and it absolutely is possible. And we have people in long-term recovery who are afraid to say that they're in recovery. I don't know if anybody saw a movie called The Anonymous People, but it's really challenged anonymity. You know, what's said in the room stays in the room. That's, to me, ridiculous. I'm not proud to be an addict in long-term recovery, but I'm proud to be an addict in long-term recovery. I'm not ashamed to talk about it. I have to talk about it. What you need is a GRASP group in Mcconnellsburg, you know, for parents who've lost children. And people who need to come to those groups are not just people who've lost children, but people who are dealing with kids in recovery. And kids are dealing with this addiction. It's a real problem. I promise you there's a lot more people than you think of. And I think that's one of the things that the Power Group is as part of a strategic plan, is putting together a support group. There's a parent that's 2 years ahead of you that's been through this, and they can tell you exactly what to do. He has to be committed to his recovery. I mean, I agree with Jeremy to have that, you know, don't ever give up and everything. But you know what? If my daughter, that I love more than almost anything on earth, if she was living with us and she wouldn't go into recovery and she was continue using, I'd lock her out of the house. I'd throw her out of the house. You know, we just had a parent in Connecticut lock their kid out of the house this past winter, and the kid died on a park bench, frozen to death, right? And I always wonder, would she have felt better if he died in his bed with a needle in his arm? So she kicked him out of the house, and she feels terrible because he died in the streets. He refused to go to treatment. Would she have felt better by keeping him in the house, enabling him, and died and found him in the morning with a needle in his arm? I've talked to over 40 parents who found their children with a needle in their arm in their bed. I don't know that she would have felt any better. So I think we have to make our loved ones commit to their recovery. And he has to, I know you want to strangle him. Sometimes maybe strangling is an option, but I think our DA might have a problem with that. I think you need to talk to other parents who are going through the same thing, but I promise you there's so many parents in this room going through the exact same thing, right? Exact same thing. Yes, sir. on ships. I mean, I have two people that I speak with from the DEA in New Jersey. Both have been in the DEA over 25 years. One of them does a lot of presentations, and he shows you pictures of mules, people who go to South America and swallow balloons, 50, 70 balloons of heroin and bring it in. To me, that's probably this percentage of it. Coming in ships, I don't know. But I will tell you that one of the things I did in Newark, once a week, I would leave and go to the port in Newark. I would be sent in. I would park in one place. 15 minutes later, I was told to park somewhere else. Somebody would come up and tap on the back of my car. I'd pop the back trunk. They would put something in my car, and I would drive out. And I would drive to a city called East Orange. And I would pull into a garage, and they would put the garage down. Somebody would come out, tap on the back of my car. I would pop my trunk. They would take whatever I had in my trunk out, and I would back out. Now, I know the 3 foremen that I saw in that shipyard knew exactly what I was doing. And I believe it's happening today. I believe it's coming in droves. The purest heroin in the country is in Camden and North Philadelphia, and the next purest heroin is in Newark and New York. All of our ports are right there. And I believe we're getting right now, because of what's happening in the Texas border, we're bringing over heroin in truckloads. And it's a problem. I talked to 3 law enforcement people today who said that so many of the kids that they bust here go down to Baltimore and Washington, D.C. to get their heroin. I see a bunch of people shaking their heads. Baltimore and Washington, D.C. is a destination for a lot of heroin that's coming into this community. And I know Philadelphia is too. So I never will agree with that. Do you remember the gentleman who kidnapped that little girl in California and burned the house down, killed the mother and the brother in the house? The house was burned down, right? And he was a pedophile, and he took the little 14-year-old girl, and they took off. And 10 days later, he was found in the middle of Iowa in a cabin. Now, we found that guy in 10 days in the middle of Iowa in a little cabin, and we can't find the amount of heroin that's coming into this country. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know. I know that we have to stop. I know we have to stop the demand. I know we have to talk, as Jeremy said. And you know, Sean and John, their story is a little bit different, but I'm telling you right now, I think what they said, we have to talk more about love, talk more about unconditional love, and get to our kids. I'm telling you, you should have seen them in these schools in Huntington and Mount Union. You should have seen the kids. You would have blown your mind. And the feedback that they got on Facebook and Instagram for the next week, people calling up, getting on Facebook, sending messages to all of them, Jeremy at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm telling you right now, our kids are screaming out for something. What I want to do is come into all these counties, get a Pennsylvania helpline on the bracelets and put it on the arms of all these kids, and I think we're going to see a huge increase in phone calls. We need to carry a message to these students in a much, much different way. But I don't think it's the place and time for it, but someone's making a lot of money. And I just think there's a real problem. And think about this. I was at that same conference of pharmaceutical executives, and the guy from Purdue Pharma was talking about how concerned they are about the opiate addiction epidemic in America. So there was a question and answer period, and they had the microphones in the middle of the aisle, and I was moving down to the microphone, and I got up to the microphone finally to ask my question, and I directed it right to that guy. When Fulton County Sheriff's Department puts a drop box at their location, and everyone in this county is able to drop a unwanted expired medication at that drop box, they're going to weigh it, and they're going to take it to a disposal site and get rid of it. It's going to be disposed, right? Every law enforcement agency in this country needs money. We are undermanned. Our law enforcement agencies need more money. So I said to this pharmaceutical rep, listen, we have some drop boxes and some law enforcement departments that are taking pounds and pounds and pounds of medication, and they're taking it to a disposal site. How about the pharmaceutical industry buy back every pill for $1? Every pill that our law enforcement officers collect, you guys buy them back for $1 a pill. They got more than $1 a pill for it. Buy it back for $1 a pill. And all that money go to cops. And he says, well, that's above my pay grade. I said, could you tell me whose pay grade that is so I can email him? Because I think I want you to buy back these pills. The pharmaceutical industry, I'm not throwing them under the bus, but they are complicit in this problem, but they're not complicit in the solution. They're not part of this solution. We can't prescribe opiates to kids. We can't have dentists prescribing OxyContin for a teeth removal. When that guy gave me all those pills, that prescription medication, I didn't fill that prescription medication, but he was trying to give me medication. You know what's funny? The prescription monitoring program, right? Every prescription that's written in the state of Pennsylvania, every prescription that's written is already in a database. It's in the pharmaceutical industry's database. The pharmaceutical industry knows every single pill that's written by a doctor and filled at a pharmacist, 100%. The information's already there. I don't know why our 50 attorney general's offices aren't getting that information directly from the pharmaceutical industry. Maybe there's a reason for that, but the information's already there. Because a pharmaceutical rep, if I'm selling a pharmaceutical pill, and I know how many prescriptions all my doctors within a 50-mile radius of my territory are writing for my competitors' pills. That information is already available, but we need to do something about it. So the prescription monitoring program needs to be mandatory in Pennsylvania. Does anyone else have any questions? I really appreciate your time and your questions. Comments? Anybody have a comment? Anybody have a question for Jeremy or Sean or John?
Why do we not offer them a program to try to get them to rehab, to deal with what's going on, instead of putting them in jail, letting them get out for the first time in 3 or 4 months? They become better criminals in the jail. They get out and then get back to the same thing again. Can we take like the SIP program, which I think is a big, great program. Can we take the SIP program and offer it to the people that we see in the first time offender?
My name's Travis Kendall. I'm District Attorney in Fulton County. I'm going to answer that question directly. First of all, to say that they're not offered treatment, I think, is incorrect. Treatment is offered time and time again, and we routinely see people coming through the criminal justice system, and we learn about what their experience was in drug treatment. And what we see is that they have, quote, successfully completed treatment a number of times, 4, 5, 6, 10 times. So to say that they're not offered treatment is incorrect. To say that the treatment is ineffective is exactly correct. The treatment programs typically don't work. As Mike explained, those 28-day programs are just not working. We do have a limited ability to offer longer-term treatment. Programs like Teen Challenge, they're effective. They typically keep a person, though, for about 18 months. And the question, unfortunately, routinely comes down to money. How are these programs funded, and who wants to pay for it? Who can pay for it? I would like to offer another, couple of solutions. And Mike has heard my spiel before. You can't pass up an opportunity to start teaching your kids at a very young age. And I mean something like 2 or 3 or 4 years old. It might seem harsh, but when my kids were little, and I mean 2, 3, 4, whatever, 6, 7, 8, if we were driving on a street and we saw a bum on the sidewalk, sleeping on a grate, pushing a grocery cart down the street, I would take that opportunity to point out to my kids, do you want to know how that person got there? Drugs. That's how they got there. They're heroin addicts, and that's self-inflicted. And you think, well, you can't be telling a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old that. Yes, you can. I'm going to say something else. A step that you could take. You're not likely to do this. In fact, I bet against it. We saw the television advertising, the way they're teaching kids, selling drugs to kids. You have control of that in your homes. You have the ability to turn that television off. Just stop it. Stop paying that cable bill. Stop paying that satellite bill. Stop those commercials from coming in to your house. You think part of the problem is that you're not communicating with your kids? Again, turn that television off in a permanent way. Have dinner with your kids. Have conversations with your kids. Be a parent. And I don't think you're going to do that, because I think you're thinking to yourself, me, give up Wheel of Fortune? Me, stop watching Duck Dynasty? It's not going to happen. It's a small thing. And you're asking, what could I do to help my kids, to prevent my kids from ending up like the people we've seen? A small thing like turning off your television. But I don't think you're going to do it. I hope the SIP program works.
Try to get them to get the help that they need right from the get-go. I come from Brooklyn, New York. I know Newark, I know Orange. I came from Monmouth County, also Kingsburg. I see a lot of people, and I don't know how many people know me in here. I see a lot of people denying we have a problem in Fulton County. Let me finish, please. I see a lot of people, and I hear a lot of people sitting there saying, we don't have a problem in Fulton County, we don't have a problem in Mcconnellsburg.
We have a huge problem.
We have a huge problem. We need to take our head out of the sand and start realizing what kind of a problem we have in this town. We just buried how many people from heroin mixed with fentanyl. A 26-year-old girl was just killed from this. Another boy, young boy, was just killed from this. We need to get our head out of the sand, accept that we have a problem in this town, and we need to take our neighborhood back away from the drugs.
I agree with all of that. But I also think you need to listen to Sean and John and Mike and ask any of them, when they were doing their thing, when they were living their life, when they were having fun doing drugs and committing crimes, when they were offered treatment, and I promise you they were offered treatment, in fact they were forced into treatment, did they accept that treatment? Or did they go to it, put their time in, and then go back and do whatever they were doing? People who get help are the ones who are ready to get help. And I think that Sean and John will tell you the same thing. It was when they were ready to stop being a drug addict, when they were ready to be a grown-up, an asset to the community, a parent, that's when they stopped doing what they were doing. Forcing people into treatment, again, you can offer it, but you can't make them have it become a part of their life. You better start that a lot younger.
I totally agree, Mr. Kendall.
I totally agree. Offering it to talk about this younger, we have to talk about. I mean, I really don't want to minimize one of the things that Jeremy and that John said, and Sean as well. This whole thing, there's underlying issues. We have to start communicating this younger and younger and younger. I understand people having to want to get clean and want treatment. Sometimes by being forced into treatment, along the way you'll get it. I got my treatment in prison. I didn't have an opportunity to say no. If I was to get out, it was going through treatment. I didn't want the treatment, and along the way, I became embracing it in my life, in my recovery. God had a huge impact on my life. I know not everybody is ready to hear that part of it, but you can get that part once you get clean. Once drugs are in your system, like it says, you don't want treatment. You want another hit. You want more drugs. You are in the grips of your addiction. You can't, especially someone who's used opiates for years and years and years. The brain has been rewired, completely rewired. There's a serious physical change in the brain. So you can't think the right way. And like you said, even 28 days. Listen, Mission Teens is an amazing program. You're in there for a year, maybe even longer. And Teen Challenge the same way. It's Christ-centered. It's going to work. 10 times better than it's ever going to work without God. And that's just my opinion. It changed my life. Why? You know, they want our message, but they don't want our messenger. And the messenger is what's important, okay? Because without the messenger, nothing happens. This is like a glimpse of what we're going to see for eternity. And I know what I want to see. I have to share that, because if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be standing before you. There's so many different facets. You know, I understand seeing the bum and seeing on the person on the street and pointing out to your kids, you know, how they got there are drugs. I agree 100%. That's how they got there. But now, that's no longer the heroin addict. It's not the bum in the street. It's because of pharmaceutical prescription opiates and heroin in the suburbs. In New Jersey last year, 1,230 people died so far related to heroin. 1,230. 75% of them was in the suburbs. Was affluent communities like, you want to talk about Keansburg, Keyport, Rumson, Fairhaven, Freehold Township, Howell, Colts Neck, down the street from John Bon Jovi's daughter overdosed in her dorm room. It's no longer now the person. Now, that'll take you there. Those people started from somewhere, but 75% of the people in New Jersey who died from an overdose last year were suburban people. Not urban communities, not Johnstown and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. It's the suburbs, and that's real. It's what's happening. So I really appreciate everyone's time. I'd love to keep asking. If anyone has any other questions, I'll be here. Sean and John are here. John's got something to say real quick.
I just want to say something real quick. I heard a lot of people saying, you know, like you said, that the drugs and alcohol got him there. I'm going to say something, and at first y'all going to look at me like I'm crazy. But drugs are not the problem. Drugs are the result of the problem. You know, yes, we need to have programs like this, and you have to be willing to accept that treatment, and it is forced upon you whenever you're incarcerated, but you got to look at what caused these people to get here, what they felt like to turn to these things for acceptance and to feel good. Like, it's our responsibility as humans, as a community, as families. We're not raising our kids right. We're not treating each other right. You know, they're stuck in front of a phone, in front of a TV. I'm guilty of it myself. I got 4 kids. You know, it's a struggle, but that's the problem. There is no love, but like they're not getting that human interaction. It's a whole list of things. I could sit up here all night long and go through everything that's wrong with the world today, but we know it. We just got to click that switch in your head. Like, you got to realize that what you're doing as an individual, what you do in your life is affecting everybody. So we need to focus on our own front door. You need to focus on your families, yourself. You know, if you think you got it all figured out, you're wrong. Right there. That right there should be a key to you to know that I got to do some more digging into this problem, because, you know, obviously I'm mistaken, because it's all of us as individuals. It's not just, this side of the tracks, or the guy in the street sleeping. It's a society issue, and that's the problem. Drugs are just the outcome.
Yeah, definitely drugs are the symptom. I totally agree. Absolutely. The final thing I want to say is, please, Power is a coalition, if you will, of people in this community, and they need more help. The sheriff's department in this county needs more help. Your prosecutor, your district attorney needs more help. Everyone in this room should try to give some time to Power, to your partnership at the hospital. Become a member of Power, this coalition. Meet on a regular basis. A strategic action plan needs to take place. You need to take this back. We need to have tip lines. There's all sorts of things that we can do that are really that work. The faith-based community must come to the table, be at the table. We need Celebrate Recovery. I was told today there's not a single NA meeting in Fulton County. That doesn't even make any sense to me. There's no Narcotics Anonymous meeting in Fulton County. Okay, an AA meeting is good. It's just not the same. Celebrate Recovery is an amazing thing. It's Christ-centered. Please be a part of the Power. Be a part of this organization. A lot of times we leave these things and we like, well, what can I do? Here's what you can do. Listen, your district attorney's got some information on changing some legislation in this state, and he needs some politicians called. Trust me, and almost everything he's got down there needs to happen. Please support the changes that he wants to see made. Please support Power. Please be a member of Power. If you can get a DVD and watch it, please make some comments. If you're on Facebook, you can like Steered Straight. Please like me, because I don't have enough friends on Facebook. This is a real problem, and we can only solve it as a community. So I'm so grateful for your time. If anyone has a question that they didn't ask out loud, I'm still here. John and Sean's still here, and Jeremy's here. You want to say something? 2 seconds.
One thing to think about, 1 in 4 girls have been sexually molested before the age of 18. 1 in 6 boys. Think about that. It's 25% of our population. 25% of the people in this room are sexually molested before the age of 18. We don't talk about it. Almost every single kid that I talk to that's a drug addict was sexually molested. We just don't talk about it. Talk to your kids, know who they're hanging out with. They don't talk about it. You see something going on with your kids, talk to them, find out. We did a thing in Huntington County with all 4 schools. In the month of April, we did a countywide blue out, and what we did, we had blue light bulbs in all of our porches just to bring the conversation up. We had kids from all the high schools write different things into the newspapers every Friday, just do a little editorial, just get the conversation out there, and we plan on building off this every year. We have one of the abuse networks over there. They just got a flood of phone calls from people coming forward. We had a young boy who's 17 years old come forward and actually go to the police, and an arrest was made due to this. So it's things to talk about, things that lead to addiction. I think it's 60 to 70% of addicts were sexually molested, like around the number. So just think about that. I mean, it's a lot more to it than just the drugs. So exactly what John said. But thanks, guys, for having us tonight.